The Emery Unified School District. Can we have a roll call, please, Ms. Tamery?
Member Miriam?
Yes.
Member Pats?
Present.
President Affelt?
Here.
I understand that Vice President Dice will be joining us later, and Member Ash is hoping to come, but we won't know until she gets here.
She had a work emergency that
Yes.
she's trying to work out. Okay. All right. Pledge of Allegiance, please rise.
Someone want lunch here? Seems like it's higher. Okay,
All right, do we have any changes to the agenda, Superintendent?
Good evening. No changes to the agenda. Thank you.
All right. This is the time of the meeting for public comment.
Can I make a suggestion of the agenda change?
Oh, yes, of
I think
course.
we should put the student swearing in to a later time, so in case she shows up.
That's a good, so your motion is to make it a floating item depending on when she shows up. All right. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay. That motion passes unanimously. Now we're on to public comment. This is the time for public comment on items not on our agenda that are within our jurisdiction. Do we have any public comment?
I'm not gonna move this. Is this audible? Fine. Yeah.
It is on, yeah.
Okay,
just gonna-
okay,
But
Um,
please speak right into the mic so you can pull it toward, yeah.
okay.
Perfect.
I'm a new teacher this year at Emery Secondary School, and over the last couple of months, I've learned a lot of things about my school and the school district. I work with really incredibly supportive teachers who care very much about their students and their well-being, but I've also learned that there are a lot of inconsistencies and concerns that make my job and my colleagues' jobs very challenging, and I wanted to be able to share a little bit about that with the board. Most recently, there was an incident involving our site administrator and a group of students at the school, and in response to that, Ms. Dunn and another one of my colleagues who's here and I held a healing circle and class discussion for the students to share their hopes and dreams for what they want the school to be like, and also to share their concerns and frustrations. And out of this conversation, we heard a lot of pain and frustrations that the students have experienced, both as new students and students who have been at the school for a couple of years. And Ms. Dunn worked hard to type up all of the students' comments and words that were shared, and I have a copy for each of you that I would really hope that you take the time to read. It was disappointing that no administrators came in to hear any part of the conversation, and I know the students really want their voices to be heard. I really believe that the school can be a great place, but there needs to be a lot more support put in place, and if the district's mission is to really serve this whole idea of a child, that there needs to be a lot more support, and I welcome any of you to come and visit my classroom anytime, and I know the students would really appreciate your presence.
Thank you. And thanks for bringing the comments to us. And thank you for bringing the comments to us. All right. Do we have additional public comment?
Hi everyone, my name is Connie Bai. I am a first grade teacher at Anna Yates Elementary. This has been a challenging year once again with the different things that have gone on in the first grade team. But one of the things I do want to express my appreciation to is we've gotten support from some staff that are part of the rec, some people such as Miss Ogden, Miss Kimberly, Miss just a lot of different staff. However, I was recently informed from some, I don't know what's going on, but we may not continue to get that support in our classrooms, and I'm expressing my concern for that because we have some extremely challenging students, and in order for us to continue having even just a somewhat manageable classroom, I feel that their continued support in my classroom is needed. They're the ones that answer that emergency phone number that goes straight to the front office. Without them, I know sometimes Ms. Parham is there and Ms. Magruder. However, what if they've stepped out? We need someone in the office and someone to intervene in a case of emergencies. They're there when I need them. I have used that emergency number numerous times, and they're there to help me. In addition, when we've had violent outbursts, they have been there to help me with my class. So I'm just expressing my appreciation to that additional staff that have been with us since the transition of the first grade classes that were separated, additional students, and the challenges that we've had.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, can I clarify? These are not additional EUSD staff, but this is staff from the rec department?
I'm not sure if they're, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that they do work at the rec, but I'm not exactly sure.
Do you know, Mr. Rubio?
So it's Miss Ogden, Miss Kimberly, Miss Angela.
What I think I can share with the board is that the principal has been doing her best with my support as well to support the teachers and to have additional staff available as much as possible in some of the rooms where teachers are having trouble with students and where we have some other changes and transitions. However, the classified union is protesting some of those additional changes. So this is an issue probably that the teachers want to talk more to Ms. Lang about to get some further information about it. But that's what I think I can share right now.
I'm sorry, that didn't answer my question. Are these EUSD employees?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have additional public comment? Thank you, Ms. Bai. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those comments. We now will move on. Our student member is not here yet, so we are going to move on to reports. Do we have an ETA report? Good evening, Ms. Turner.
Good evening, President Elfelt and board members. I have 3 items to report on tonight. I'll start with our most pressing and concerning is the situation at ESS. It's been hectic, to say the least, in the last couple of weeks. But there is a general consensus among both students and teachers that ESS lacks systems. There's a lack of direction. There's a lack of support, lack of communication, and the list goes on. The recent personnel changes in the last 6 months, we feel have contributed to those hectic times. Students don't understand why the people, it hasn't been explained to them at all, why the people that they've had the longest relationships with have been let go or dismissed. And so students are feeling unsupported. They feel largely ignored. And I just want to point out that when you're in a chaotic and hectic mode and students are not feeling that they're supported, and teachers aren't feeling that they're supported as well, but particularly for our students, it sends this subliminal message that they are marginalized. It sends a message that the people that they have the most connections with are easily discarded and cast aside. It sends another subliminal message that when those people are let go and they have personal connections with, And it has not been explained to them, the situation, as best we can explain it. But they just see the situation as, well, the people who look like me are all gone now. And I had personal connections with those people, and now I have no one to talk to. It sends really seriously concerning messages that we don't matter. And so I need to make the board aware of the situation at ESS, that systems are going to need to be put in place very quickly. I've had complaints that there has not been an emergency drill of any kind. Just basic needs and support systems need to be put in place. And so I'm particularly concerned with the comments that students have made to me. I'm over there 3 times a week now. And they come up to me and they say some things that are along the lines of they feel like their family members are racially profiled. That is completely disturbing to me. I did not send students over and encourage them to continue in our system when I taught 8th grade for the last 3 years, and encouraged them to continue on to ESS to feel marginalized. And so I will continue my conversation with Dr. Rubio as early as this Friday, and I will go into depth with him, and I hope he will share that conversation with you, and I will also email you, because something has to be done to make our students feel safe and feel like they're being heard, and that we put systems in place to guarantee their education. So that is my first item. Second item, I don't think that we have fully articulated, the teachers at Annie Gates have officially and fully articulated that it has always been our interest to stay at that site. It is important for me to pass on the message to you that we feel some configuration of K-3, K-5 would speak best to long-term growth in this district. And so we want the board to continue to look at viable ways to keep Annie Gates open, and we'd like to make an official declaration that it is important to us that we have room to grow as a district, that if parents and teachers are interested in keeping Annie Gates open, that it is a study is done, and it's a thorough study, and that we get pertinent information as to whether or not that can be accomplished. And last but certainly not least, we're all here tonight to show our support for the ratification of our contract. And so I'm going to speak a little bit about the process. You know, I remember complaining that it took a long time over the course of last year, but when we came back to the table in September, we did have Dr. Rubio there present for most of those sessions toward the end and in September, and we feel that his presence absolutely made a difference because he had the opportunity to listen to our rationale for why we were asking for things and why we needed to keep certain things in our contract. And so it's always important when we come to the table that all parties are there so that you can honestly hear not only the passion, but the need, and we always have a rationale. And so we're appreciative of his presence, and we also appreciate greatly that we were able to work out a deal where we're keeping our benefits, which are most important to us. We were able to put some money on the schedule, which is always helpful. And of course, again, we're always appreciative of. And so it was a good process at the end. Bob Kingsley, who is the district's attorney, is always a consummate gentleman and very professional, and listens to rationales and can appreciate our rationales. And so it was a good working relationship. And so we're just here to say thank you for that. Everybody's in the audience. And we appreciate that we're able to move forward, and we're looking forward to next year when we renegotiate, and hopefully we'll have more money on the table. It's always difficult to live in the Bay Area with a teacher salary. And if you guys don't have any other questions, that's it for me.
I have a couple questions and comments. First, I want to thank you for coming up here and speaking the truth to us. We need to hear that. And I think it can be challenging, particularly in the current environment in the district, to talk about the concerns that we have, because I think they're very real and need to be addressed head on. I was approached today and told that teachers weren't aware or are still holding out hope that Annie Yates would remain a viable site. And at this point, I'm done. I feel like that ship has sailed and the board needs to be open and honest with you. I will fight to keep it open, but I think the rest of the board, and I'm challenging you guys tonight, you've made the decision. Why don't you guys just say it and let them know that we're closing that site and moving it to the other site. I think keeping them in limbo, keeping parents in limbo, is just crass at this point. The open hearing last time was mediocre at best, and laid out quite eloquently why we should keep the site open, but I realize that that ship has sailed, and so I think any pretense of otherwise is disingenuous on our part, so I want to just make that clear, and I'm going to take your comments to make that opportunity. You know, I am saddened by the way this district is managed, and am struggling to make sure that we get on the right path, but we've cared more about buildings than kids, and it shows, and it has shown. We have stuffed our high school kids into an elementary school for 2 years. We have failed to provide leadership, and now I'm on a rant, so I'm going to say thank you again for your courage and appreciate you, and this was probably one of the best moments I've had watching you share out, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Turner, and I again appreciate you're echoing the sentiments of the students, and that we've got the documentation for that, and we'll certainly take into consideration your other concerns. We are continuing to study contrary to what Member Pats would say, we're continuing to study the issue of how to deploy our school site in the coming years, and we'll let you know when additional study sessions are scheduled on that. Do we have any other, let's see, CSEA? Do they have a report for us tonight? Okay, do we have I don't think we have a student representative report, but I'll call it out anyway. All right, superintendent's report.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to share that I really appreciated getting to meet with some of the teachers today at Annie Yates. I was able to sit down with the second grade teachers and kindergarten teachers and the ELD coordinator, and we are going through the aspects of the new literacy software that we've identified, targeted, and purchased through the LCAP. We'll be meeting with the first grade teachers, I think, tomorrow. And I had the really great benefit of being in a sixth grade classroom today in Ms. Corpus's classroom as the students were finishing up a project with the Kala Art Institute where they had, I think they took canvas that they cut, they actually sewed it into and put layers of aluminum and other things inside that they glued, and they sewed them as the shape of the world, and they painted the continents on them. And it's a great integration of science and art. And I just want to, again, say how much I'm happy that we've reestablished a relationship with Kala and the Art Institute. Ms. Corpus and a few students and a representative from Kala have agreed to come to the December 16th meeting to talk about the project they're finishing up. So that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just have a very short board president's report. I spent some time with Ms. Lang this morning at the Annie Yates school site, and continue to be impressed with her leadership at the school, and I know she's dealing, Ms. Bai, with some difficult issues in the first grade transition class and trying to make sure that we get the support there. So I have confidence that we'll figure out a way to make that work and make sure that our teachers continue to be supported. Beyond that, I've noticed that our student representative has arrived. And it's time. I'm going to move us then to the swearing in of our student representative, Angel Brown. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Good evening. All right. We're going to go over to the podium, and you want to take that piece of paper with you, which is your oath. All right, raise your, it's between us. Speak loudly. Raise your right hand. I, Angel Brown, do solemnly swear
I, Angel Brown, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties of which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, you are now a member of the school board. Member Brown, would you like to give us 30 seconds on what grade you're in, what your priorities are at school, and your sort of interest in serving on the school board?
I am in the 12th grade. I'm a senior at Emery High School. What else did you say?
What your priorities at school, what you'd like to accomplish, and, and why you're interested in being on the board.
Right now, what I'm trying to accomplish is mostly being a voice for all the seniors and the juniors, because I feel like I can accomplish that very well. I'm also trying to work on my grades and getting into a lot of extracurricular activities. And I'm interested in the school board because I also do debate, and I like to be heard, so trying to make sure my voice is heard.
Excellent. Well, you have, and or your alternate, whoever's showing up, you have a specific spot right at the beginning of the meetings for a student report every board meeting. So you can be sure to, sort of come and think ahead of time what you'd like to say in a couple of minutes to bring us that student voice or just what's happening at the school. It's really your time. So that's just an FYI for the future.
Okay.
And I made the same offer, and I'm sure my fellow board members would do the same, to be a contact and support for you if you need help with the board packet or issues that are on the agenda or any other questions that are going to help you be a better student board member. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Okay.
All right. We're now going to move on to our consent calendar for the evening. Are there any items that board members wish to pull off the consent calendar? I had one of our minutes, I think it was the 28th.
October 28th?
Yeah, so I need to pull that off.
May I ask that the board pull 7.4?
Yes, do we have
Someone to introduce.
people in the house?
Yeah.
Great. All right, so 7.3 and 7.4, any other items? No. Okay, why don't we go forward with 7.1, 7.2, 7.5, and 7.6. Do we have a motion to adopt those items?
I'll motion.
I'll second. I'm sorry, we're going to second?
You got it.
All right. Roll call, please.
Member Merriam,
Yes.
Member Pats,
Yes.
President Affelt,
Yes.
and in light of the fact that Student Representative Brown was not here, we will abstain for her.
Okay. I just got logged out of my account. So why don't we go to 7.4 and I'll circle back to 7.3.
Okay. Ms. Sorrell, our HR director, is here tonight. Ms. Sorrell? Do you need some tech support too, John? You got it?
Yeah.
Good evening, board members and members of our audience. I would like to introduce two new staff members. First, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Mayer. Jennifer, if you'd stand, please. Ms. Mayer began teaching in 2010 in Toronto, Canada. She came to EUSD last year as a substitute teacher and continued as a substitute teacher this year. She then obtained the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing permit, allowing her to accept a temporary position at the high school as a special education teacher. Next, I'd like to introduce Ms. Delia Salazar. Prior to joining the Anna Yates staff as a multiple subject teacher, Ms. Salazar began her educational career as an instructional assistant, and she worked as an RSP teacher. In addition to her current teaching credential, Ms. Salazar has a credential in culinary arts, and she sometimes likes to sing and dance.
Wonderful. Thank you and welcome to the school district. Appreciate your coming to us.
I want to say thank you to both of you for coming on board. I think our students will benefit from having you here, and I really appreciate it. And as a special ed teacher myself, I really am always happy when we find quality teachers to work with our students with the largest needs. So thank you in particular. And if you ever need anything in special ed, feel free to give me a call. So, English, I can't help at all.
All right. Member Mary or Member Brown, any
No question.
comments on this item? Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to adopt the personnel actions?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Member Merriam,
Yes.
Member Pats,
Yes.
President Affelt.
Yes. Okay, on to item 7.3, which is the minutes of the October 28th meeting. The minutes reflect a report out from the closed session. And item N1 in particular on the superintendent's evaluation says there were no actions taken, and the minutes should reflect that an evaluation was approved to be delivered to the superintendent at the meeting on the 28th.
Could you repeat that, please?
An evaluation of the superintendent was approved by the board to be delivered to the superintendent. You got that? Okay. So I would move that with that amendment, the minutes of October 28th be adopted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Marion?
Yes.
Member Pats?
Yes.
President Affelt?
Yes. Okay. All right, I think that concludes our consent items, and we are now on to discussion items. Superintendent, do you want to introduce the first discussion item?
Yes, I think we have Ms. Turner here again to come up for for the declaration of surplus and obsolete library books. Ms. Turner, thank you.
Quickly tonight. So I'm requesting that the board approve the weeding or deselection of books in order to keep our library collection relevant. It also helps in collection development because once we can identify where needs are, then we're able to build a stronger and more relevant collection for our students. And I think it's pretty clear cut. I'm finding copyrighted books. I put in this report 1947 because at the time of the report, I think that was the date at that time, but then I just recently found a couple books back from 1937. So we are in desperate need of updating the library collection, and the first step in that update is to weed or deselect books.
Okay, are there questions from board members? I had a few.
Mhm.
It seems that it says a lot of these, almost all of the books even, were added on one day in 2004, May 13th. Is there some, is that
There-
just a convenience, so the system they were entered, or we actually got
It
some?
may have been some update to the system, so
Mhm.
I'm not absolutely sure about that. It makes sense to me that Ms. Eliason would have added it on that date when we upgraded the system. We had Follett library management system, and then we upgraded to a Destiny Follett management system.
I see.
It's been a while. I believe that took
Yeah.
place in 2004, so that would make
That's
sense.
probably what happened.
Yes.
Okay. Are all of these books in bad conditions, or?
They are in bad condition. They are covered with dust.
Mhm.
I mean, my hands were literally black when I picked them up.
Mhm.
They're not, some of them aren't in good shape at all. Some pages are falling out. They've been repaired, you can tell, numerous times. And so, you know, they've lived their life.
And do we, I get that some of them, like, you know, African Peoples from 1962 is probably out of date.
Not
and
going
we
to
ought to have a
up-to-date information.
more modern
Right,
sense
exactly.
of Africa by now. But Alice in Wonderland, for example,
So any,
hopefully we have a copy or more than one of Alice in Wonderland.
we
that
do have more than
okay.
one copy.
So these are extras.
Fiction books, you know, will last as long as they stay in place, like
Mhm.
as long as the book is intact.
Yeah.
And so the only reason why we would discard fiction books really is because of the condition of the book.
Got it.
Now, you have other guidelines as far as nonfiction. They shouldn't be any more than 10 to 15 years old because, you know, as we progress as a society, more information comes, particularly in science, and so we want to make sure that students have relevant information. So nonfiction books do have a 10 to 15 year guideline for deselection.
Mhm.
Fiction books are as long as they're in good condition.
Got it. So if it's a fiction book and a classic, it's on the list because it's just not in good shape. We've got other copies that.
Yes.
Got it. Appreciate that. I was curious, this is somewhat personal, but
Mhm.
the Japanese stonecutter's tale was one of my favorite tales from second grade, I think it was.
Mhm.
I'll take it if you're, instead of it getting thrown out, or I'll buy it, or whatever.
Okay, I will.
Unless it's
I would
completely
definitely look for it.
unusual.
I went
Okay.
down memory lane myself when I
Yes.
got to all those books in the 70s.
Mm.
And I said, oh, I remember checking this out of the library when I was a kid. So I understand the nostalgia and sentimentality.
I've passed that tale on to my son already.
I will.
So I didn't even know we had it in our library.
I will see if I can locate it for you, President Alpha.
Okay, I appreciate that. The thing, and this, I'll bring this up more in the discussion item, but I'll ask it of you. It seems to me that we actually need a formal resolution with a recommendation from the superintendent that says the superintendent's recommendation is X, get rid of it, and it may just be putting a page on the front of something of this list for us to take action on. So I don't know if you, Ms. Turner, have
Mhm.
any thoughts on that issue, or
Yeah,
or
I'm
the superintendent
not
does.
sure we've ever actually done it that way. The process was always, I presented a list of books, the titles, and then the board decided. But it's been a while for me, because I've been, back in the classroom for 3 years. So, but prior to that, I don't ever remember doing it any other way. If you are in need of an additional statement from the superintendent, by all means, let's do whatever we need to do.
Are you suggesting a change for this particular one right now? Or, because Ms. Tamery has alerted me that we've done it both ways over the years.
Uh-huh. Why don't we bring that up in the discussion after we take the
Sure.
public comment?
Okay.
We can circle back to
Okay.
that. Okay. Any other questions of Ms. Turner from board members? Okay,
Okay.
thank you for your presentation. We're going to take public comment, if there's any, on this item. Is there any public comment on our deletion list? Okay. All right, on to the discussion issue. And this is a question for you, Superintendent. I'll give you a second. All right. Well, it's on the resolution in particular. I think we do need one, just looking at the board administrative rules.
Okay.
That, which are based on statute, that there's a resolution declaring that the books are old and outdated, that their value does not exceed $2,500, that it will cost more to arrange the sale of them than they're worth. So there are a few sorts of items like that, and then we have to give notice to the public, because maybe the public wants to buy these or something. So that is a question for you. Like, what is the actual? Are we dumping these? Are we trying to sell them? We put them on Craigslist? What?
I believe we're discarding them. Is that right, Ms. Turner? Is that my understanding? They're obsolete.
Done in the past is we offer them to parents and students,
Mhm.
and whatever's left after they have
Mhm.
taken whatever they're interested in, then we discard
Mhm.
what's left.
Okay. So that would probably be part of the direction. So I would recommend that we just put this on as a consent item at our next meeting,
Got it.
and formally approve it at that time.
As a
Because
resolution, including the description that we are, what Mr. Turner just referenced regarding the process, a little bit more about the process.
Yes, and that we're going to give, I guess, 30 days notice to the public, or there's some actual specific time line in the statutes that want to make sure school districts don't throw valuable stuff away without the public having a time to.
Got it. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. Ms. Turner, I'm sorry, I guess I have a question. Does that I think President Affeld is correct, but does that interfere with you? One is we appreciate, and I certainly appreciate the work you've been doing, by the way, at the high school. But does this interfere dramatically with your process right now? Okay, great, thank you. All right.
Okay, any other discussion? Does that seem like acceptable direction? Member Marion? Brown? Okay. All right, so I think that gives us direction on the first reading of this item, and now we are on to approval of the public disclosure of the proposed collective bargaining agreement. Superintendent?
Sure. Good evening again, and Ms. Turner, if you'd like to come up, the purpose of this item, or Doris, excuse me, Doris, the purpose of this item is to secure the board's approval of the I'm sorry, I forgot we're doing AB 1200 first. The public disclosure of the proposed collective bargaining agreement as required by AB 1200. Doris Sue, thank you.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to look at the AB 1200. It was created to ensure the school district is fully prepared to meet their financial obligations. It requires the school districts to submit the summary to the county office and also for the public to review at least 10 working days before the board take action on the proposed agreement. And on this proposed agreement is for 3 years from 2015 to 2018 between the school district, Emery Unified School District, and the Emery Teachers Association. It's 1% on schedule, retro to July 1st, 2015, and 2% one-time off schedule, one-time payment. And as you can see on the certification page, it will cost the district about $123,000 in fiscal year 15-16 and over $40,000 in the next 2 subsequent years. How to come up with these numbers, you can see the attached pages. It will give you the details on the breakdown on how these numbers arrive.
Is this the attached pages when it says it? Because there's only one page.
One page is the certification page, and then there should be 8 pages altogether
So that's the other
on the
document.
summary.
Okay. All right.
So any questions on it?
There's a typo on the certification, the one-pager, certification of the district's ability to meet the costs. Just on the year, it says June 30th, 218.
Oh, okay. All right.
So,
It should be 2018.
right. The costs reflected in these documents is just the cost for the salary increases for the certificated staff, right?
For the teachers.
Yeah, it's
yes.
not classified.
Nope.
It's not any other.
It's only for ETA members.
Okay. Okay. Other questions from other board members?
No.
Okay. And this, is this actually an action item, or is the next item the action
Actually,
item? Or are they
on
both?
page 8 of the summary is requiring the superintendent and the board actually to sign off on the certification of the summary.
Okay.
All right.
I think we're going to take public comment at this time on just on the disclosure, not on the agreement. Okay, so if you want to make a public comment about the accuracy of the numbers, now's your time. if you want to make a comment about supporting the agreement, that's the next item. Okay. Just, we have to deal with these separately. So is there any public comment on the numbers or the documents that are in item 8.2, which is the reflecting the public disclosure of the collective bargaining agreement and its fiscal impact on the district? Okay. Seeing none, is there any discussion among board members?
No.
Okay. Do we have a motion to then adopt the public disclosure of the collective bargaining agreement?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Member Merriam?
Yes.
Member Pats?
Yes.
Member Affelt?
Yes.
Student Representative Brown?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're now going to move on to the next item, which is an item for the approval of the Emory Teachers Association and EUSD 2015-18 contract. Superintendent?
Yeah, I just want to say before Ms. Harrell begins that I want to echo Ms. Turner's comments that I know that the teams didn't always agree, but we had a good working relationship and we always looked for common ground. So I appreciate all the time that both teams put into this and how we work collaboratively to get to an agreement. So thank you to Ms. Turner and the union team and to my staff as well who worked many days on this. Ms. Harrell.
As has been shared earlier this evening, in terms, there were some other items that were negotiated and reached agreement on, but the major items are usually salaries and benefits. So in this instance, as has been shared, we agreed to 2% off schedule beginning the 15-16 year and 1% on schedule for salary, as well as a continuation for the existing employee cost sharing for the medical benefits. In essence, the base rate at which we have been paying, the concept was to stop that at a certain point, but for the teachers union, that base rate is going to continue. Should it increase within the next year or the next year or so through the duration of this contract, that base rate is going to continue through the next few years for the teachers union. The other issue that was of importance was the stipend schedule, and the agreement with that was that for the existing special education teachers who were employed by a certain time of this year, they will be grandfathered into the special education annual special education stipend. Incoming teachers post that time and new teachers going forward will not be receiving the special education stipend. It was put in place years ago when SPED teachers were required to be highly qualified. Now everyone is expected to be highly qualified. So those were some of the major points of the agreement that just sort of needed to be shared. And with regard to the MOU, there's one correction that will be made. One of the teachers listed, the last name is correct. The first name has a misspelling. So Ms. Turner and I are going to pull that piece, that MOU, sign it again so that the actual live contract will have the proper spelling of everyone's name.
And for the record, which teacher is that?
Mr. Bartholomew.
Okay.
And that is a summary of the agreement.
I did have a question about how do the health benefits and dental benefit caps work?
Where we are now, we have a base plan that everyone refers to as Kaiser 3, which is the base plan. And the district pays the premiums for employee only, employee plus one, and family at that plan rate. Years past, as that base rate increased, the district met that. And then all the other plans that were being offered, if they cost a bit more, if there was a Kaiser plan or Blue Cross plan that cost a bit more, the employee covered that portion of the cost. So now for the teachers union, that base plan rate, should it increase over the next few years, the district will continue to meet that rate for the next few years.
And that's medical, dental, and vision.
For the medical, yes. For the dental, we did not put in a cost sharing on the dental and the vision because across the board, most districts do not put in cost sharings for the dental and the vision.
And Ms. Farrell, could you remind me and remind the board, all the groups are not the same. CSEA is
CSE
not
and
the same, correct?
management, those groups have a cost sharing where their Kaiser 3 base rate is capped at last year's rates. So
Okay.
any increases for this year going forward, those two units are covering the cost of those increases for the Kaiser
members.
base rate plus any other rates that are available. But there was a health benefits team that worked really hard this past year, and we worked with our broker CBT to introduce new Kaiser plans and new Blue Cross plans to help mitigate some of the impact of any of the rising costs. So a lot of the Blue Cross plans fall below the base Kaiser plan, and the two new Kaiser plans that we brought in also fall below that base rate. So we did do a lot of work to try to help meet or mitigate some of the impact of the increasing costs. And we have a lot of more plan options.
Our healthcare costs, I assume, are going up like everyone's?
Well, it depends. Kaiser's going up. Somehow Blue Cross seemed to go down a little bit.
Mhm.
Over the years, they've gone up, 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 up. Anywhere from 7%, 9%, 12%. This year, Kaiser went up slightly. Blue Cross went down. We don't know what could that be due to. Some of the lawsuits, who knows? We don't know what they're going to do next year. We just don't know.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, this is time for public comment then on this item, the proposed DTA contract. Do we have any public comment? No, just public curiosity, I guess. Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the ETA proposed contract?
I move we approve the contract, although I wish we were giving them more. So.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Marion?
Yes.
Member Pats?
Yes.
President Affelt?
Yes.
Student Representative Brown?
Yes.
I want to make a quick correction, not giving them, paying them what they truly are worth and are earning. Apologize, wrong choice of words there.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next item, moving right along, and congratulations and thank you, teachers, for showing up and not just here tonight, but every day. 8.4, Superintendent?
Yes, good evening. I think we have Ms. LaPlante. I saw Ms. LaPlante here. Oh, there you are. Ms. Dunn. Ms. Dunn, who's presenting on this one? So we are bringing to the board for recommendation, requesting the approval of 2 school psychologist interns. And I think Ms. Dunn will explain the timing and the reasoning behind this.
Good evening. This is an opportunity for us to again bring 2 school psychologist interns to Emory Unified School District. It's a collaboration between special ed and wellness, and the wellness funds are coming from LEA billing by our school psychologist, school nurse, and speech pathologist. So it's not impacting the general fund as such, but what we decided to do was to apply early and put the information out there so that you could approve it, because there are several different intern fairs at the colleges for interns, especially in the higher ranks that are coming up immediately in, I think it's December and January, we've always been in a position where we've tried to ratify this after it, and we didn't get the candidates that we deserve and we would like to have. So that's why we're putting it on the schedule for 16, 17. We already have school psychologist interns here this year. That's already been taken care of, but we wanted to do it earlier, knowing that the funds are there and guaranteed, but we wanted to make sure we got out in front of it so that we could get the best candidates we can. And so that's the reason that it's presented before the board.
Okay.
And there was one small correction in our zeal to get it before you. On the description, we put 14, it's actually 16,000 per candidate.
I have 16,000 on
Oh,
mine.
you do? Oh, good. Sorry. Take that back.
Okay. Do we have any questions of Ms. Dunn on this side?
So we're using the funds we get from Medi-Cal from LEA billing.
Mhm.
Is that correct? So, and the services they're providing are all supplemental services, no IEP-based services, correct?
No, it's supplemental services, and Lauren will explain exactly those services.
No, they're providing IEP services
Yeah.
and services for special ed, general ed, and 504.
Okay, so the problem is that we're required to fund those, and we can't, if it's the right fund, I always mix these two up. We have to make sure that it's not supplanting what we would be doing, it's just supplemental stuff.
It's a blended funding stream between LEA and special ed. So it's two different funding streams.
Right, but it's supposed to come, so anything for IEP services has to come out of the special ed funding, and so it just gives me pause because we don't want to lose the Medi-Cal. This is the money we're getting from Medi-Cal, correct?
A portion of it.
Right, this isn't the time survey, but the actual reimbursement. And so the committee meets and decides what it goes to. And the challenge is that money can only be used for supplemental services and cannot supplant, two words I had to learn the difference of, cannot supplant services. So if they do an assessment, that is traditional IEP services, but if they provide counseling to kids who wouldn't have it on their IEP, that's okay. So we have to be very careful how we use these funds.
One of the things that we did when we talked inside the committee is that the special ed funds were going to be used for what you were talking about, and the other monies come to counsel those students, because we just didn't have enough people to do so. So we're not trying to supplant, we are supporting.
Okay. So I just,
And we've done both of those, and
Okay.
it's good to know, because that's one of the things that we put in the notes that we do send out to the Medi-Cal
yeah.
folks.
And then did we get the Medi-Cal funding this year, or, like the last year, I think they paid 50 cents on the dollar, or even 25 cents to some of the bigger districts. Did we get our funding for this?
There's two different streams of funding. The funding that this is coming out of is the LEA billing. So when Lauren sees a student and she wants to jump in and should say it, that's fine too. Or when, and they can bill for Medi-Cal, that's the billing part of it. We
Yeah.
did finally receive the MA, which is the Medi-Cal Administrative
Okay.
Assistance.
Perfect.
Money from the last 4 or 5 years. I think we got 75% of what we
Perfect.
actually billed, but we did receive it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so the LEA Collaborative approved this use of funds, and we have our person who is our contractor who runs Leader Services, and so we've run all this by him.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Other questions of Ms. Dunn or Ms. LaPlante? Do we have any public comment on this item? All right. Do we have a motion on item 8.4?
Oh, so moved.
A second?
Second.
All right. Roll call, please.
Member Miriam?
Yes.
Member Pats?
Yes.
President Affeld?
Yes.
Student Representative Brown?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And thank you for continuing to get us some good interns.
Just seems we had a new employee in her department and billing. I mean,
All right, next up is the item 8.5, English Language Program Update.
Good evening, everybody. We have Ms. Miller here tonight to update the board on our English Language Development Program. Welcome, Ms. Miller.
Hello.
You might have to move that microphone closer, I think.
Let me see if I can get this. How does this mouse work? Hang on one second.
I'm not now, but I might have.
Right. Hello, I was asked to come tonight to give you an overview of our English Language Development Program, and then with a follow-up in the spring to let you know how things are going. So what I wanted to share with you first is, let me see if I can figure this out. I'm not used to this computer. Yeah, okay. Is a kind of a profile of the languages that we serve in our district. And as you can see, the Spanish speakers are our largest population of English learners, with about 15% of our students being Spanish speakers, followed by Arabic-speaking students, and then Punjabi, and a bunch of other languages that a few students speak. Our CELT levels by grade level. Most of our beginners are at the kindergarten level, you can see, and then there's a lot of intermediate students in second and third grades, and then hopefully they're starting to become more fluent and transition into early advanced and advanced, where they can be reclassified as fluent in English in the upper grades. These are our CELT levels by language spoken, and I focused on our three largest populations, Spanish speakers, Arabic speakers, and Punjabi speakers. And as you can see, most of our Arabic students are in the beginning and early intermediate levels, whereas our Spanish speakers are in more of the intermediate and early advanced levels. So right now, because I work primarily with our beginning and early intermediate students, I work with mostly Arabic speakers. And that's kind of a shift that has happened over the years, where we have more and more Arabic speakers. In the past, I worked mostly with Spanish speakers.
Those are percents, not numbers?
Those are numbers.
Those are numbers, okay.
Some academic concerns are students that have gaps in their formal education. We're having students coming in the later elementary grades and in middle school and in high school. And some of them don't read in their primary language. So we have to teach them to read in English. And some of them don't have very strong formal education in their primary language, so they don't have the content knowledge to apply in their primary language to the subjects they're learning. So that's a big challenge.
And is that because they're coming from other countries where they haven't had access to an education system? Or
so most of our Arabic speakers come from Yemen, and a lot of them come for a couple of years and will learn some English, and then they go back to Yemen, and then they'll return again. Or they'll come later from Yemen into later elementary school or middle school. And depending on, it's probably a socioeconomic thing, depending on what their education was like while they were in Yemen. It varies. English learners make a lot more progress when they have a strong foundation in their primary language, because then they just have to transfer the skills and the knowledge. But to learn brand new concepts, especially how to read in English for the first time, is very challenging. And also just because of the content demands as you go up in the grades, it's hard for them to access content when they're not really reading, or they're reading so far below grade level. So those are some of our biggest concerns. And then our long-term English learners. Those students that kind of have achieved an intermediate level in English, maybe they're at the higher levels in English, but they're not showing proficiency in their coursework, or they're not able to, in the past, pass the KC or do well on the STAR tests. So those are the students that we really need to kind of look at and how we can support them so that they can be reclassified. Oops. Okay. So some teaching strategies that we have focused on over the years, and that we want to continue to focus on, is to teach academic vocabulary words across several days. to integrate, and this is in the content areas, to integrate oral and written language instruction into content area teaching, to provide small group instructional intervention to struggling students, and to implement effective use of SEDAI to provide access to the core curriculum. These are strategies that we have been working on for the past several years to some degree. We were doing English language development learning walks, and we started at the beginning of last year, but then we're not able to continue, and we're hoping to continue those again this year, where teachers are being supported in the implementation of these strategies, and then we're kind of going through the classrooms to monitor the strategies being implemented, and then giving teachers feedback without it being critical in any way, just supportive of teachers. So, and the idea behind these teaching strategies is that we are providing integrated English language development. That means providing access to English learners in the content areas and using the California English Language Development Standards. And in addition to the integrated English language development, that we're also providing the designated English language development, which is based on the language level of the student and providing them with the instruction they need to be successful in the content areas or to achieve the next level of English. Again, using the ELD standards. And some challenges with those, with the implementation of the strategies is just supporting teachers in best practices, supporting teachers in working with students at varying language proficiency levels. And again, those newcomers that are coming into the upper elementary grades, the middle school, and the high school, because they need support in the foundational literacy skills and are working well below grade level. So we're planning on providing professional development this year in the English language development standards. We started last year with just a brief introduction on the new standards, and we're hoping to provide more support this year in order to transition to full implementation next year. I've been working to meet with grade level teams of teachers to support them in the implementation of the strategies. I plan to provide modeling during staff meetings and professional development, further professional development during staff meetings, and then to collaborate with teachers when I can to support students in their classrooms. We have an English language advisory committee, and last year we met 5 times, and we have about 16 parents in average that attend these meetings. And there was not a school site council last year to make our recommendations to, but the ELAC was able to share the recommendations with Dr. Rubio and with the site principals. But they want more tutoring for students, Spanish translation at meetings and of documents being sent home. They wanted a music program and physical education program and English classes for parents. Some of these things we've been able to offer them this year, and I'm hoping to be able to work to offer them English language classes. But I think, and actually we need to work on making sure we're offering more translation. And then this is the scheduled meetings this year. There will be 5 meetings this year. We've had 1 so far. And at our December 10th meeting, we're going to be talking about the local control accountability plan with Dr. Rubio and Lori McDonald. And that's the end.
Okay.
Any questions?
Do we have questions for Ms. Miller?
That was a great report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Question. What means are you providing or using to entice or garner parental involvement?
At the ELAC meetings or
Yes.
just in general?
At ELAC meetings.
So I have a relationship with a lot of the parents and the students, so I I work on the relationship I have with the students that I work with and give them notices. I reach out to parents by phone sometimes. I have a group of parents that have been participating in the ELAC meetings now for a number of years, and they reach out to new parents in a variety of ways. There's not one way, but,
Okay.
you know, yeah.
Thank you.
In the past, Ms. Miller, you've come to us with, well, first of all, let me thank you for your presentation. I'm glad you're here and that you're coming back in the spring. It was something I've been trying to get in front of the board on a regular basis is a sense of how our English learner program is going. So it's been very helpful. We've done a master plan for English learners. We're required to have one in place, and I think it's every 2 or 3 years we do it. Or can
Yeah.
you tell me where we're at in the
So-
cycle on that one?
Yeah, so we need another one. There's a lot of changes with the new California English Language Development Standards, with the LCAP, with the new English Language Proficiency Test, going into effect probably at the end of this school year. So it's on the agenda to work with at the ELAC meeting, and so I feel like we'll probably work on it this year, and it probably won't be ready until next year.
Okay.
And I think the last time the board approved the master plan was in 2012. So it's been a few years.
Okay, and do we look at a specific subcategory of long-term English learners? That's a
When you say a specific subcategory, what do you mean?
well, it's a new policymakers have been looking at this LTEL, long-term English learner category, increasingly over the last couple of years to see are we tracking English learners who aren't really transitioning out but are in our program for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
Do we have any? Maybe
We do. We have about 14 LTELs right now in our district. There's approximately 3 high school students who qualify as LTELs, and then the rest of them are in the upper grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at Anna Yates.
And what's the designation? Is it 6 years?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's one designation, but they say
Okay.
5 to 6 years.
Okay.
And then it just depends.
Yeah. And so what is your assessment of why we have 14 out of what's our total
English learners?
EEL population? Must
About
be
133, 131.
133. Which is, let me start there. What percent is that of our, are we still around 15%?
It's about almost 20, I think.
Okay.
There's only 12 English learners at the high school,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest are at Anna Yates.
Okay. So why do we have 14 LTELs? What's going on there?
I think that, so it's kind of what I said before. There's some students, the high school students actually all score high enough on the CELT, other than one. They've been doing well in CELT, but they haven't passed the CASE when it was in effect, or they haven't been performing well in their classes, so their teacher doesn't recommend them for reclassification. Similarly, at the elementary school, some of the students have done well enough on CELT, but the teacher won't recommend them for reclassification because they're not performing up to grade level standards in their coursework, or they haven't been able to show proficiency on the STAR tests. There are students, though, that are in the upper element, in the middle school right now at Anna Yates, that have kind of been on the radar for quite a while and have kind of never performed as well as we would want them to. And I've worked with some of the students, but then when they reach a certain level, it's always questionable whether it benefits them, because I'm pulling out most of those beginning and early intermediate students to work with them in small groups. And the last thing I want a student to do is to miss their content area teaching. And so when they're at a certain level, like when they're in the upper levels of language proficiency, I would prefer not to pull them out of their classrooms. So that's why we need to increase our teaching strategies to support these students so that they're getting the academic vocabulary that they need, they're getting the speaking and writing skills that they need to be successful. And that's why we need to support teachers, because I feel like with all the changes that have taken place over the last few years, it's been hard on teachers. It's been hard to sustain practices that have been in place, and it's been hard to have the focus we need in the classroom on teaching.
Yeah, I think we've it seems to me, from my somewhat outside observation, that we haven't done a good enough job on supporting SEDI practices in the classroom and professional development, and it's in the LCAP. You've got it here in your list of strategies, so that's progress. Do you have any benchmarks, or how are we going to know if we're doing a good job with our SEDI support or not?
Well, that's part of the reason I would like to start trying to implement the ELD learning walks again, because at least that gave us kind of a snapshot of what was happening in the classrooms. I'm also encouraging, when I work with Ms. Lang or when I work with Mr. Ferber, that those SEDI strategies are integrated in everything we're working on, so that it's just good teaching, and that whenever there's a professional development around any content area, that we're including the SEDI strategies. I'm going to be working with a group of teachers in the new English language arts adoption, and so we'll be looking at a curriculum that is aligned with the new ELD standards, and that it will give teachers more tools in order to have both integrated and designated ELD when they're teaching English language arts, and then hopefully we can continue to work on the other content areas using the SEDI strategies and integrating ELD.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you to think about that, and when you come back in the spring, think about how to present to the board evidence of how well our SEDI professional development didn't occur, whether that's teacher surveys, whether that's the walkthroughs, whether you've got test scores or whatever. I think if we could see some evidence one way or another of how well those strategies are working, that'd be appreciated. You mentioned the KC, and as I'm sure you're aware, the KC's now been suspended. And not only that, the governor pushed through a amendment to the bill that says that anyone who ever failed the KC and passed everything else to graduate is owed a diploma. So we're going to talk in December, and one of our board members, our board items, is going to be looking at how do we can we identify those students and notify them that they have a right to a diploma now. So many of them are probably English learners, or some of them anyway. Do you know of any, or do you have any thoughts on how we, have we had students who would have graduated but for the KC, and how do we get in touch with them to let them know that they could get a diploma?
I don't know. I really don't. I'm sure that we have that data somewhere, but I don't know.
Okay, but is that, am I correct in my assumption that some of those students probably were ELs?
Yeah, I bet.
Okay. Emory High, you mentioned we've got, I think you said 12 ELs. We put in place more ELD support year before last. How is that working out?
So last year we hired a long-term substitute to support the English learners, and that worked to some degree. But this year we're hiring a part-time English language development teacher, but that person has not been hired yet. So Jennifer Mayer, the woman who was hired for special ed, has been trying to help to support the English learners. There's 3 English learners at the high school that qualify for structured English immersion, and so those are our focus for the English language development. And then there's some upper grade students who are at the higher levels who also need support. And those LTELs that just really I think, need a little push to be able to succeed in their coursework.
Okay, well, I think, obviously that's an area that we need to keep our attention on as well, and it sounds like you're doing that. I actually don't remember, I don't know if the superintendent does, I didn't remember that it was a part-time ELD support
Yeah.
in the LCAP. Is that what we had?
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay,
part-time.
all right. The other thing we had in the LCAP was that at the elementary, or the K-8 actually, we were going to be intentionally doing more ELD support with the art, music, PE teachers, and science. Can you tell me how that's working out, what we've done there specifically?
So I've met with the science and the art teacher. Right now we don't have science and music teacher, excuse me. Right now we don't have an art teacher because that has changed. The teacher that was teaching art is now back in the classroom, and we have a long-term substitute. But I have met with the music and the science teachers to share the teaching strategies, and I'm going to continue to collaborate with them in the support of their English learners, but I've just had an initial meeting with them.
Okay. We are going to have also in December at some point a report on the sort of first third of the year implementation of the LCAP, and so that piece can be part of that report as well, hopefully. I think that covers my questions. We're on Member Dice, welcome. Yeah? We're on the English learner report from Ms. Miller. Did you have any questions?
No, I can't say that I do. It looks very detailed, the report, so thank you.
All right. Member Brown, do you have any questions? All right. Did you have something?
Just a comment. I just want to really say thank you, Ms. Miller, for all that you do, and like all of our teachers in the classrooms, and Ms. Mayer for your support last year, speaking of ELD. I believe that a lot of districts struggle with this topic in terms of getting ELD strategies in place, uniform, solid, in the classrooms for a minimal amount of time, and thank goodness we have you as really the bedrock of our ELD program. And so you are, like all of our teachers, you are highly valued, and I just want to say thank you for tonight's presentation, plus everything you do to keep us on track.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for keeping us on track and paying attention at this level to these students. It's an important part of our community. All right. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay. This is an information item, not an action item. So we will move to the item 8.6, Superintendent.
Yes, good evening. We have Mr. Baker here tonight to give us an update on the ECCL project. I just want to add that before Mr. Baker begins, many of us continue to be excited on the progress, and so Mr. Baker, we appreciate you being here tonight to keep us up to date on how things are going with the new facility. My daughter's getting picked up in a cab.
Good evening. Once again, it's a pleasure to give my monthly update to the board on the progress of the ECCL project. This presentation is identical to the one in the board packet. It does have some new photographs from today that I've added in here. The only difference are some new photographs. I will forward this to Ms. Emery, who can get it out to you after the meeting this evening. Again, some orientation in terms of, I'll refer to buildings A, the community building in the corner of 53rd. B, the administration building along San Pablo. C, the K-8 school in the center of the site. Excuse me. D, the high school at the corner of 47th. And E, the gym and pool. Construction update, as Dr. Ruby mentioned, things have been going very quickly out there. Our biggest issue on the building, E, the gym, the roof reconstruction is now complete, and the roofing is complete. That was completed about 2 weeks ago. The drywall installation inside that building is now complete, and interior finishes completion is in progress. At the high school, roofing and all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, roughing is complete. Exterior stucco and glazing is in progress. The drywall and interior finishes are in progress. In fact, the drywall is now about 95% done. At the community building, Building A, the roofing is complete. Exterior walls are starting now, and drywall will be commencing soon, probably actually starting next week. At the admin building, Building B, the wood framing is almost complete. I'd say it's about 95% complete. And then Building C, the K-8 school, all the metal deck and all the concrete decks, all the floors are poured. So all of our concrete now is poured except for sidewalks on the project. A look at schedule. Board Member Pats had asked to reintroduce this presentation, so I'll be doing so moving forward. This is an 8-week look ahead schedule starting this week. And Building A, exterior windows are actually underway and they'll be done by the end of this month. Exterior waterproofing and stucco will be done by mid-December, so that building will be what we call closed in by mid-December. Interior drywall will start soon and finish sort of towards the end of the month. Building B, the framing will be complete by next week, and all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, rough-in is our next big effort in that building. That's actually started a little bit this week, and that should be done by the end of the year. Building C, the exterior framing, the exterior wall framing actually is going to start at the end of this month, and that'll take a while since it's such a large building. And the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, rough-in is commenced, and in that building is quite a bit, so that will continue through into January. The high school exterior plaster, in fact, the high school exterior plaster will be done actually at the end of the month, with the exception of the wall at the deck on the second floor. So that's going to finish up a bit earlier than shown here. Interior drywall actually also will be done about by the end of November, much earlier than shown here. We've done some pickup time to get that building, as that building will be the building itself will be substantially complete by the end of the year. Exterior glazing is going to be all done by the 30th. I want to point out on the high school, at the end of this month, actually after the first week after Thanksgiving, the scaffolding will be coming down, and you'll see the exterior of that building, all the stucco, all the painting, all the windows in. So we'll be reveal what these buildings look like for the first time the week after Thanksgiving. At the gym, Building E, interior finishes are well underway. The gym floor, I'll show some photographs there. The flooring itself is going to be delivered next week. It has to acclimate, and then the flooring process starts. That's the last thing that will finish for the gym to be finished, so that it can be used when school starts right after the first of the year. And the pool renovation is well underway. Our unforeseen conditions, which I've been briefing the group on for quite some time, I would say we're probably really about 90% done with that now that we're done and out of the ground and done with the gym. Again, the things included removal of coating at the gym steel framing, gym roof reconstruction. As a result, the gym will be complete in December. We did, as I mentioned to the City Schools Group, we did have the City Council approve Saturday work or a waiver of the noise ordinance for Saturday work until the 26th of December. Limited time, meaning that it's only from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on those Saturdays. On the Saturday following Thanksgiving, will be limited to interior work only, and the 26th limited to interior work only. I want to point out that we had some neighbors actually support the project and support the waiver who spoke at the council meeting. Probably our biggest asset was we had two guys from the boys basketball team got up and speak, and they were outstanding, talking about how they've been very patient dealing with temporary facilities, and they're eager to have their basketball season in the new gym resume once school starts after the first of the year. But the council did approve that. All attendees and all council members in attendance voted yes. So it was a good partnering with the neighbors and with council and with the students to get us over the finish line for the gym. The utility work is nearing completion. We're doing the last pieces of that in the community commons. And so after really in about 2 weeks, we won't need access to the community commons between buildings C and D, so we can start the construction of the deck, elevator, and stair structure that links C and D and allows access to the second floor of D. Again, we had about a 2-month delay due to the Division of State Architect changes to Building C steel, which got us out of the queue for fabrication. We picked up 1 month by pouring the first floor slab early, and we're working with Turner to pick up that additional month so we can finish in June rather than July so that we can get everything up and running for the K-8 school. All of our we're about 95% complete with our multi-agency coordination. Both cities, Emeryville and Oakland, Caltrans, PG&E, our good friends at East Bay Municipal Utility District. Really all that's left here is doing closeout. The gym gas hookup is one of our last PG&E items we need to get done. So other than finalizing, we're pretty much done with those agencies. And as the next several months continue, we'll close them out. Some photographs, including some of the new photographs. Building A, this is the entrance to Building A. You can see the window frames are now in. The black you see there is the exterior waterproofing. So we're going to be starting stucco work on that building in a week or two. This is the inside. All the windows are in again. This is the large window. This is actually about a 10-foot tall window that faces out to 53rd Street within the large large community room in that building. Building B administration, you can see that the teen room is in the foreground and the large 2-story lobby in the back. Again, that wall you see out of red steel will be a glazed wall. This is a picture taken today that shows the framing now really pretty much complete. We're doing the parapets on the upper floor, so they'll be done with framing pretty much by the 1st of December in Building B. In the high school, we're now ready to do our painting on the interior, ceilings and finishes, which is all that really remains. You can see the ceilings inside one of the classrooms. If anybody, of course, I always invite folks to come by and visit. All the sheetrock is done. You can see what all the classrooms are like. All the windows are in. All the drywall is done. This is a little tricky to see. On the left-hand side, you'll see that's in one of the labs. The eye wash is now in, so we've got some of the finished equipment going in. Again, in that room, what remains is painting, ceilings, and finishes. On the right-hand side, if you look carefully, that's the exterior stucco. It's hard to see through the scaffolding, but the dark gray shown there is the finished stucco coat. The light gray with the red tape is where the windows are masked out so they can start painting next. Once they do the exterior painting, again, in a couple weeks, that scaffolding will come down. Building C, there's the big steel frame of the big K-8 school. Again, all of our concrete slabs are now poured so you can walk around. Another great place to walk is on the 3rd floor where the grade 6, 7, 8 will be. You can see it's a great view of Emeryville and the surrounding East Bay communities, and in fact, even the bay itself. So it's going to be a really nice view from that standpoint. This is on the 1st floor looking across. You can walk up the stairs now and see those upper floors. In the gym, you can see this is inside the gym. This is actually about a week ago. All the painting is done inside the gym. We're just finishing the acoustic board in there. And then next week, the wood flooring arrives. We now have our gas starts up next week. Wood flooring works. You actually have to have the wood flooring acclimate to the building, the humidity and temperature in the building for a couple weeks before it goes down. So it'll be acclimating while they put the wood sleepers down, and that floor goes in. Once the floor goes down, we stripe it and then put the finished coat on. And so that will be done. The last thing that's done in Building E is going to be that floor. And so that's going to be exciting to have that foundation. You can see the basketball backboards are now in and operational. This picture on the right-hand side, you'll see this has been installed today. This is the divider between the two halves of the gym, so it can be divided into 2 different rooms, and that's going in. Was going in as this afternoon as I took the picture. Again, all the drywall was finished in the building about 10 days ago. We now have, what you see here is hard to see this photograph. This is inside one of the restrooms. That's the backer board for the tile, so they're going to start tiling next week in that. And then we have tile, some painting. Most of the painting is done. The tile needs to be done, restroom fixtures, et cetera. Again, with substantial completion December 23rd. We confirmed that with Turner and the subcontractors today. Our only wild card right now is how long it takes the floor finish to cure. We think that'll probably go beyond, a couple days beyond December 23rd, but still, so the basketball court will be usable when school starts on January 4th. The pool is well underway. That's they're doing the demo work of the existing deck and the edges of the pool where we have a new gutter system going in. And so that's well underway. And again, with a schedule right now, weather permitting and finishing around February 1st. I reported to the Citizens Oversight Committee last week and the City Schools Committee group the week before on the update of Turner's compliance with the Community Benefits Agreement, the CBA. Again, they're required to issue a quarterly report at the end of every quarter. So they issued at the end of in October, they issued their report for 2015, which went through the end of September. Their local business utilization, 60% of all their subcontractors are located within the East Bay Green, at least within the East Bay Green Corridor. The Green Corridor is an area that stretches from Richmond in the north to Hayward in the south. 19% of that 60%, 19% of all subcontractors are the local zip codes of Emeryville, West Berkeley, and North Oakland, and West Oakland. 41% are outside locals, but are in that green corridor. And also 21% of our subcontractors are minority or women-owned business enterprises. Local hire, there are 5 full-time laborers on site from the local zip codes. Again, Emeryville, West Berkeley, North, and West Oakland. There are 2 local apprentice and pre-apprenticeship meetings were held this year at the Cypress Mandela Center. There will be 2 more next year as we close out the project. Again, this is to encourage local residents to employment in the trades. And youth engagement, Turner's required to have 3 interns. We had 1 intern last year. The second intern starts in January when school starts this January. And we're looking at getting a 3rd intern, probably helping us do closeout over the summer. Some additional work, again, this is all of our low voltage systems, which are security, data, telecom, audiovisual. We've all confirmed those, are now negotiating pricing to any changes we have with Turner. The gym pool procurement, the gym and pool furniture has been procured and is on its way, and some has already been delivered to the gym. We're finalizing the large piggyback contract. That's the scope of work where we are utilizing other districts' contracts of competitively bid furniture to get the best price. We're also finalizing our independent vendor items. These are ones we'll procure independently the goal here, of course, is to get the best pricing outside the piggyback scope of work. That's really what we're doing here, is making sure we can get the best price for the district. Again, procuring these within district guidelines so that we can deliver the best value for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And that is my report for this month.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Do we have questions? Member Merriam?
Good evening, Mr. Baker. A couple of questions here. First question is, you mentioned 2 milestones as far as opening of the partial campus. You've got January 1st for the gym and February 1st for the pool. What are we targeting for the high school, the K through 8, and the site?
Okay. So the K through 8, the buildings A, the community building, B, admin, and C, K through 8 school, their contractual requirements to be complete June 1st. Building A will come online sooner. As you can kind of see, that's going to be done in the spring. We've not talked about, we could conceivably occupy that building sooner if we wanted to do that. That's something we can talk about. But so they're contractually obligated to be complete June 1st. Right now, like I mentioned, the high school, the K through 8 school is into July because of our DSA steel issue. We're trying to bring that back in, working with Turner to do that. The high school building will be substantially complete around the first of the year. The challenge, as I've mentioned before, is the elevator and stairway that access the second floor. That steel structure, that big canopy structure, which is really the outdoor lobby, elevator, and stair, we've not been able to start because our utilities were delayed in the community commons because of the problems we have with East Bay Mud not allowing us to do any connections until August of this year. So right now we're looking at a completion of that structure roughly in April of next year. We're trying to bring that back to try and, of course, we're trying to bring that back and do it as quickly as possible. We have been working with Oakland Unified to extend the lease of the Santa Fe school. Again, we want to try and get them out of Santa Fe as soon as we can, so we're working with Turner to finish up that structure. The key thing here is the elevator. We need ADA access for the elevators. That really is the critical path. And we're working with them to get that done as soon as possible so we can coordinate with the school to move them into the new high school.
Another thing, too, you mentioned about the DSA changes, and this is always in the back of my mind as far as we had approval from DSA for the structural set along with all the other disciplines in, August of 14 to start breaking ground. I can't wrap my head around DSA changes. Was this due to RFIs? Was this due to inadequacy of the plans? Because normally if you have approval from DSA, you're allowed to start construction and you encounter changes, but you deal on a case-by-case situation. So I'm still not understanding that.
Yeah, so let me explain actually. So we got DSA approval in I believe it was August, September, that time frame. That approval included revisions to the steel design, which included added beams, a lot of work at the trusses. We had deferred approvals in the trusses for Building C that had to be coordinated. That work was then it was approved by DSA, but had to be actually designed last fall with the structural engineer Murphy Beer Curry working with the subcontractors. So we had to do a lot of the redesign to incorporate we had DSA approval, which was conditioned on those changes. They had to be designed, then they had to be detailed through the shop drawing process. What happened is that process we needed to be in with those approved shop drawings by the end of last year. Because of that, we had a redesign. It took longer. Glacier Steel kicked us out of their queue. So we lost the 2 months actually about a year ago. So the steel fabrication, which was supposed to be delivered in June, came in August. Okay. So the impact of that kind of came down the road. But again, the actual impact was when they pulled us out of the queue about a year ago. And so we picked up a 1 month by pouring the ground floor slab before steel erection, which was the reverse how we're going to do it. And now we're working to doing some pull scheduling to bring that last month back into where it needs to be.
Okay, that better explains it. Yeah. And then finally, one other thing having to do with one of your photos that you had in the gymnasium, the conduits that run across the court. If you can see that there. Are they? I'm looking at are they seismically supported?
Yeah, you can't really see from this photograph. They have hangers and straps.
Oh, they have hangers and straps, but are there diagonals hangers from that?
I can look into that and see because I would agree. You can see at the bottom of the beams they're actually rigidly fastened.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. We can look into that.
Please do.
It may be that some of those straps are still parts and pieces that need to go in. I can look in that and get back to you.
You're going to be starting painting.
Well, the painting is done actually.
Oh, it is.
So, but they might. I think that is actually, again, it's more rigidly fastened than it looks there, but I can double check on that and let you know.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Baker?
I had I wrote it down. Oh, the question was regarding the Saturday work and it being conditional through the 26th of December. Is that something that we anticipate needing to go back to council at some point in the future to?
We may. So council, it was specific to the gym and specific to that time period. I think and I remind the team as we go into every weekend to make sure that we comply with the requirements the city has, so that because we may want to do more work. For example, if we can do some Saturday work on the elevator and stair structure to bring that back in for the high school, we certainly would do that. I want to point out that the Saturday work that's being done is at Turner's cost. They actually had asked for all the way till January for the gym, and we said no. We negotiated to bring that back in. Some of the delays we've had are actually because of Turner's subs and their forces. We did have a big hit by having to rebuild the roof. That was correct. But we only granted them until the 23rd of December for substantial completion. They said, okay, we can do that. We got to work Saturdays at our cost. They're working at their cost to do that. We had one challenge with Saturday work is that the council requested that all the backup beepers and safety sound indicators be turned off. You can do that with flaggers who are basically flagging if you're backing up. Problem is some of the newer equipment is under newer OSHA regulations that don't have a switch anymore. They don't allow you to turn it off. So again, working with the neighbors, working with planning, we're making our best effort to not have those sounds. We may have some limited backup sounds, but the neighbors and planning are amenable to that as long as we manage it and notify people and work closely with them.
Okay.
And so we're also out there on Saturdays. We're contacting the neighbors and planning kind of before and after every Saturday to kind of say how it went. But it's kind of in many ways, it may be kind of a pilot program, because if this goes well, we may like to go back on a limited basis to council with, for perhaps the high school elevator, perhaps the K through 8 school, things we need to pull back in on the schedule.
Okay.
But so far, so good. Keep our fingers crossed that everyone's been collaborating well.
Right, and I guess the other part was in terms of the other neighbors in that vicinity, in terms of the parking. I mean, I'm sure that's been a huge sigh of relief to have parking back on.
Yeah, well, we do. We have. It's been a bit of a mixed bag. We do have. Again, we finished the curb and sidewalk along 53rd. We were originally going to do that work next spring. We did it this fall so we could get parking back. If you notice, the fence is now on the curb. People are parking along that side. So the neighbors are glad to have parking back. However, there's also a lot of construction trucks that take up that parking, and so, we're trying to have all the construction trades park on 47th and not 53rd. It's gotten better as this week has progressed. There's been more public parking along there, so we're going to keep trying to do that and do that. Again, as we get more trades and when you do interior construction, you have more trades. The truck traffic kind of increases, so we're trying to manage that best we can. But it's been better since when we first reopened that sidewalk on 53rd, it was all construction trucks. Today, there are probably about 2 or 3, and we're mostly private vehicles along there. So I think it's improving.
And I don't know how useful this is, but I do recall at points that AC Transit would allow us to use their parking garage. I don't know if that would be.
I've not heard of that, but that's something we certainly should look into.
We have absolutely been allowed, or they've granted us access to use that facility because of many events anyway, that site.
Okay.
So that may be something to think about too.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. We'll look into that for sure.
Well, just my little thoughts.
So on the Saturday construction, what are the hours at which we'll
9
be making
a.m. to
noise?
6 p.m.
Can we limit the noisier activities to even later than 9 a.m.? It's not start beeping till 10 a.m. or.
Yeah, I mean, they like to finish early, so usually I guess it could go either way in terms of we actually have gone.
Make sure you're in the mic.
I'm sorry, we actually have requested. We've done.
I think he needs a new mic. Do we have an extra? Yeah, you've gone red.
We had actually, the Turner's request for timing was from 8 to 6. We went to council, everyone concurred to give some relief, so we went to 9 to 6.
Okay.
And all the residents seemed to be fine with that. Last Saturday, the first Saturday, we had so it was a bit noisy. We talked to neighbors and had them stop. Last weekend went very well. We didn't have any complaints against. We're out there. We talked to neighbors before and after, so far so good. Future Saturday work, should we request that, we could have different sets of rules. Everyone seems to be okay with those rules now. If we have other issues, we can certainly be flexible and pull those hours back. Turner's been pretty cooperative with that and trying to keep the noise level down.
Yeah, that's good, and I'm just suggesting that you suggest to Turner to the extent that they have some flexibility in when they can start.
Yeah.
Even if 9 is the rule,
right?
They can do the noisier
Sure.
stuff a little later.
Okay.
Let's try to do it that way.
Sure.
Okay. Other questions?
You gave a hard date for the opening of the K-8 and admin. You didn't give one for the high school. What was the hard date for contract for the high school?
The original contract date was the end of December, and when we had the issues with the utilities, we moved that date back to the end of April. And we're trying to pull that back in to see if we can get the high school folks in earlier.
So, I'm sorry, can you explain that to me? We amended the contract to change the date?
We granted an extension of time for completion of that facility.
So you did?
Well, technically the district did, because the district holds the contract with Turner.
I don't recall voting on that, okay. That's within your authority to do?
Yes, yes, it is. It's not something we would normally bring to council. We'd be happy to show you the analysis that led to that granting of those days.
Well, it's a $250,000 cost to the district, right? And that seems to me to be something that should have had at least a public discussion of. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but it seems to me if we're going to spend $250,000 more to move the date, I would have liked to have discussed it. If nothing else, just to point out that that's challenging to me. So,
What I can say is I don't believe that the lease agreement has been finalized, so that could go to the board. I want to point out again that the reason that this has occurred.
mentioned the pipe in the street. I'm tired of hearing about it.
Well, I just wanted to point out that's what caused the issue.
Yeah. And as a $250,000 issue for a pipe in the street, I don't know. It strikes me as a challenge. And have we begun negotiations about what happens if they're not ready in June?
If who's not ready in June?
If the K-8's not ready in June, you said that's the hard date, right?
Right now, that is the contract date, is June 1st.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're working what's called pull scheduling with the trades to bring, right now they're at July, to bring that date back to the contract date.
Right. But again, have we got it, that's the carrot. Have we talked about what the stick is going to be? Like, have we talked with Turner, hey, if you don't make this date, this is the consequence?
Well, right now, the consequence is that they have liquidated damages in their contract, and we would be able to assess those. We've not granted any extension of time on the K-8 school.
But you could at any time, right?
Right now, we're not inclined to, because we believe that we can achieve that date by doing some rescheduling.
And again, I'm just curious, because we have, we're going to ask the taxpayers for $5 million more today. And I just want to make sure that the town is getting their money's worth, although I think that ship may have sailed, sunk, and been buried. So again, I'm looking at the budgeting, just thinking in my head when we were here last, we were talking about contingency funds. How are we doing on that?
So the budgeted contingency, the Turner change orders, if you will, there are two contingencies. Turner has one within their contract, and there's another contingency. And the Turner contingency is used, there are two kind of categories of things that is used for. And that is drawing.
I remember all of this. My question is, how are we doing on funds?
So I think that our projection now is that we'll use up that contingency as budget. We'll pretty much hit what had been budgeted for things of the following categories: unforeseen conditions, like our East Bay mud issue, and our utility resequencing, the unforeseen the roof structure in Building E, soil remediation, things like that. Those sorts of things. For clarifications of the drawings where things are not correctly detailed. We don't have a lot of that. We have some of that. For regulatory agency impacts, such as the DSA steel issue, where after contract, agencies made changes which then have cost and schedule impacts. And some kind of a reasonable number of owner-related changes. But there's about $3.7 million was in the original budget for contingency. And that anticipated, I think we're going to just about hit that. The exception is some of the things that I think we'll talk about later tonight, such as the furniture budget and some other scope changes that the district and city have desired to make. Those sorts of things were not, I would say, weren't anticipated when that contingency budget was set. But in terms of Turner change orders for all the kind of construction-related work, we're probably going to just about hit that budget amount.
So I guess one last question, because it was brought up at the last meeting. So what's the metric that you use to determine that both the project was a success, came in reasonably close to budget, reasonably close to on time, and that your oversight of the project, how do you guys score yourselves?
Good question. Typically, for a project of this type, and we actually had this discussion when we set the budget back in August of last year. Typically, like to budget 10% of construction costs for contingency, and on a $58 million project, that would be $5.8 million. And we budget, and 3.7 is basically what we had to work with in the budget that had been previously budgeted, and that's what we. So it was a very tight contingency budget, but typically we see about 10% is fairly common. In terms of schedule, I think we're actually doing very good compared to other projects of equivalent type. You do have with construction the schedule impacts we've had on Building E were an existing building that once we open it up, there were a lot of issues primarily with the roof structure. I want to point out that Turner asked an extension all the way to February for the gym. We did not allow that. We worked with our schedulers and theirs to pull back and hit that December 23rd date, and I think that's a success. We can't just let Turner be saying we want to have as much time as we want. We would never do that. We've not cut them any slack on the K-8 school either. The challenge with East Bay Mud was we discovered unknown pipes in the street in February of last year, and they were not able to or willing to come out until August 17th to cut through that pipe so we could start our site utility connections in the street. That was very frustrating. If you ask, so that was frustrating for us because we employed all the we harnessed the resources we had, including the city manager, to try and influence East Bay Mud, and weren't able to do that. So that was very frustrating because the building itself is going to be done as scheduled. It's the elevator and stair structure that we have to start now because we needed access to the site utilities late. And that's been frustrating because we did everything we could to try and get that work in the street done, and East Bay Mud did not allow us to do that.
Okay, so that was a nice summary, but I didn't hear a metric in there.
Well, to be honest with you, every construction project is different. And I can say this, though, that the team we have there, including the Turner team and our team and the design team, is doing a great job. I mean, things are moving actually very smoothly out there. And where we have not had the issues I've pointed out, we've been right on time, and things have gone very, very well. So if I have to, again, the things that have occurred have been things that have not been within our control. That happens on construction projects. Things that are in our control, we have managed those well, and we've hit all those targets, and we're on schedule. And I think we're doing very well in terms of contingency compared to other projects. Again, we had a very tight contingency on this project for the types of things that I mentioned earlier. And I'd be happy to share data with you if you'd like to do that.
Well, I'm just doing some numbers in my head. So 10% contingency would be good at what you said, a $53 million project.
58.5.
Okay, so let's call that $6 million.
Mm-hmm.
And you said we had 3.7.
Correct.
And now we're going to go to the people and ask for another 5. So what I'm hearing is an $8 million is what we really need the budget for contingency.
I do want to point out that of that number that you mentioned, of our current projected change orders, nearly 50% are owner changes where the city or district has decided to make changes, and all of the items that we might discuss tonight that would be in this new bond issue are all owner requested changes. These aren't changes that are required to be made. It's the changes that the district and city have said they would like to do. I can also show you a breakdown of the kind of change order projection breakdown, what the percentages are for each of the categories that we have them in. I might say that except for owner requested changes, we're doing much better than similar projects in terms of change orders and contingency.
Well, that's good to hear. So what you're saying to me, if I heard you correctly, is that we're coming in on budget. time we can bitter about, but there's nothing necessary for the extra $5 million that we want to go into debt.
It's different. For example, one of the issues we have is the way the furniture was budgeted. I think we've discussed in this group that in order to get to the project budget, there's been a gap of about $2 million in funding for furniture all throughout the project, and that's our single biggest item.
Were we very public about that? I mean, transparency is a critical issue for this board, and so I just want to be curious, because we had this issue with the pool. It went over budget, and sort of we saw that all along, but we didn't talk about it. And so I guess that's my question with the furniture. Was this an expected thing that we were going to go over budget with, and we just sort of ignored it and didn't sort of publicize it? Is that what I'm hearing?
I would chime in just for a second, if you don't mind, Member Pats. Well, to answer your question, about a year and 3 months ago, I was very public at a city schools meeting to council members and board members that we had an ongoing problem, and I think Councilwoman, I'm trying to think which council member asked the question. They asked what was the situation, the budget situation, and they actually asked what was the shortfall, to which I responded we had a very large FF&E problem. So we were public at that meeting, and we were recently at the last city schools meeting. I again went through the history and the background of the budget situation concerning why we walked into the project needing to value engineer $2.5 million immediately out of the project, and why we were in the current situation. So I feel like we were.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just, again, I feel like we do everything as an emergency at the end, and should have been front-loaded more, but okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So we'll get into individual budget items with respect to the bond in our next item. Are there other questions for Mr. Baker? Yes.
Yes,
member.
just one minor one, just to add to Member Patz's comment pertaining to the liquidated damages. What are they in amount per day?
The finish, the milestone, the project completion milestone, the one in June 1st is $6,000 per day.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And as a follow-up, in terms of the question about how you would measure your success or failure as a construction oversight company, I heard you say the extent to which you're meeting contingency or costs exceed contingency, number one. Number two, the extent to which the project's on schedule. Number three, the smoothness or lack thereof of interactions in the actual construction project, which I suppose relates to both of those two items. Are there any other criteria that
I mean,
you would put on
I want to
table?
be clear about this, is that, again, if you take out owner meaning city and district generated changes, of which the pool is one, for example, if you take that out, we'll fall below the contingency we budgeted.
So you think you're...
I think
yeah.
actually in terms of that, in terms of those
Okay.
and non-owner change orders, we're
Yeah.
doing really well, actually.
Okay.
Okay, I mean,
And-
much better, I would say better than average.
I understand. I'm just
If
trying.
I know.
My question was, are those
there-
the criteria?
Okay.
And I heard you say you think you're doing well on
Yeah.
contingency, you think you're doing reasonably well on timing, and you think the project is going well on interaction-wise.
Right.
So, and my question was, are there any other criteria?
Okay.
And those,
Oh,
those might be...
those are really the primary thing. I mean, the important for us is the team is working well, because that's how we solve problems. And that's how when we have things that are within our control, how we bring things back to where they need to be. And I think that's to me very important, is that the district has hired good quality professional people to do a good job. Other criteria would be, are we interacting well with the community? And I think the recent request for Saturday noise waiver, where we had community support, was a big win. If you recall, about a year ago, we went in at the urging of the city manager, we went in for a overall noise waiver, and we had 30 residents speaking out against the district, and all the council members voted no on it. This time we had community members in support of the noise waiver, although be it just for a short period of time, and all council members present voting yes on it. I think that is a significant achievement, given frankly, some of the contentiousness that's existed between the city and the district on this project over the last many years. So that would be a fourth criterion that I would add to that mix.
Okay, all right, thanks. Do we have any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, thank you
Great.
on this item. And Superintendent, you want to introduce the next item, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening again. Item 8.7 is for the approval of the Resolution 6, authorizing the issuance and sale of general obligation bonds, 2015 Series E. I'd like to start just before we have anyone from CFW available for comments or questions, just to point out to the board that I think Ms. Timmery has placed in front of you a chart analysis that I was working on with Mr. Baker a lot in the last week to confirm and reconfirm. So I believe in front of you, Mr. Pat, did you get one? Okay. There's some detailed analysis of additional project costs that are laid out. I know some of these things we've been discussing for a while. Some of these have been discussed this evening, but I just wanted to provide these to the board, and just to say that for anyone watching the meeting, that I'll spell out some of these items. Again, one was the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that we need to provide for the facility and all the buildings, including for our partners. One is to have a natural turf, soccer, baseball, football field with no rubber in that material, to make it as safe as possible. Another item on the list is actually a signal at 53rd Street that we actually did cut out, but the city planning department came back to us and told us we had to include that. So we have a number of items on the list, including canopies at the student entrance that the previous city manager and I felt like were important in terms of providing coverage and safety for the students in terms of inclement weather, and a number of upgrades. So while there are many changes that the city and the district have asked for, a number of the changes were in effect to bring our plans up to date for the design of the building, and to make sure the teachers and the students have everything that we think they need, as well as the community members and the seniors who will be using the site. Thank you. And then we have members from CFW here tonight available for any questions.
On the FF&E, I want to know, because that's really half of the main cost here, Tim, $2 million. This is an item we've discussed. It's come up over time during various board meetings, most frequently around the pool. It's also, as you said, you raised it at city schools. And Mr. Baker reminded us at the Finance Committee today that it was a value engineered item that was taken out, and that at that time Superintendent Sugiyama indicated that was something he thought we could cover with developer fees, and that in fact we do have $2 million in developer fees, but as we discussed at an earlier board meeting this summer, and over time, we went ahead and approved the city's request to do a pool. Pool upgrades, different filtration system, they changed the design, and we also we learned had a very poor estimate from the expert, for whatever reason, the consultant, on how much the pool would have cost in the first place. But all that to say, as a good partner, we agreed as a board unanimously to build the school that the city was telling us, in their judgment, was the pool the community wanted. And we agreed at that time that we would not hold up the pool conversation and the construction and the gym and the timeline to first resolve the FF&E question. So I'm just reminding my fellow board members and folks at home that part of the conversation, which is half of the likely a few $4 million bond that we're going to be able to go out and get if we were to approve the whole thing. So that we've used in effect our developer fees to cover the pool, and we're filling the hole with FF&E as proposed through a bond initiative.
That's correct.
I'm sorry. Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't the contingency money used to fill the pool?
No, that was a developer fee thing. I don't. Mr. Bake.
Conversation we just had. Now my mic is dead.
I have a little device here I turned off.
Let's try that one.
Yeah. Contingency fees, maybe you want to come up, Mr. Baker, if you recall, were discussed as a possible source of some of the pool funding or some of the pool options.
My recollection, it was the action of the board, actually, that the pool is approved and that developer fees would be used to pay for that cost. I would defer to the board to clarify that, but
That's correct. That was the direction of the board.
Yeah. Well, we can go back and look at what the record is. My recollection was, hey, if we don't have to use the developer fees and we got contingency left over, sure, let's use that first. But that's not proving to be the case. So the developer fees are a hard investment we've already made into the project. The pool is being built. These other things on this list could not exist if we don't approve this bond. So that's kind of where we're at. Are there other questions of the board for superintendent or any of our bond representatives here tonight?
I might add, if President Affeld, if you don't mind, just a reminder to anyone watching and to the board that one of the reasons, although we know the estimate was quite off, as you mentioned, from the original the consultant who gave us the estimate of what we might need for a new pool, just as a reminder to everyone, I'm happy that at the end of the day, the city did really advocate for a design that we believe will be really better for the children and the seniors, because of the specific type of pool. My understanding is that while the design is costing more, there will be a lot less water movements in the pool, which the city believed that was the right programmatic decision to make for seniors and children. So I just want to add that to our conversation. While that is very related to this evening's recommendation that we're bringing to the board tonight, I just thought I would add that detail.
Okay. Just a couple items. You have a network hardware item on the list of potential additional project costs at $376,000, and the security upgrade at $109,000. And a technology upgrade at $433,000. Can you explain what those are?
Sure. The plans that were created over the years, while the project approval timeline maybe stalled or lapsed over time, those project plans, some of those plans, particularly around the network and the technology, became fairly outdated. There was also, at the time, some things that were removed from the project, I think, in terms of budget cutting at that time. So the network hardware the network hardware has been upgraded to make sure that we are in today's current standards as much as possible. The security upgrades were really also jointly created by the city, added by the city and the district, because we wanted to make sure the facility is as safe as it could be, which is also another item on here, which is there's a security gate upgrade here on our list tonight as well. And then the technology upgrades were primarily for instruction in the classrooms for students and teachers.
And an upgraded network cable for 124,000.
Oh,
That's better,
It's yeah, it's actually
speedier internet.
Yes, yes. In fact, it'll be the building itself will be what we try to do with county consultation, with county support. Alameda County Office of Education and their technology department helps us a lot in the planning pieces and design of this, or they have been helping us. So we brought them on board to help with this as part of the work they already do for us. We wanted to make sure that the cabling was correct. The original plans had coax cable for the surveillance system, for example. So I see our Don Marion is nodding that we probably don't need coax cable in the building. And the upgraded network cable, to be specific, is called Cat 6A cable, which is the current standard, and going forward will keep the building somewhat ready for the next 10 years in terms of the internal wiring for the network. Yes.
Question for Dr. Rubio. In the networks for both the school and the city, are they were designed separately, or were they at a later point considered to be separated as far as security measures and such?
The actual network, because the city has some secure and confidential transactions that they're running, they requested early on in the project planning that there's a parallel network that is separate to some extent, and even down to the hardware for some of their transactions. So that has been in the design. That's what the county actually was meeting today with to further detail that out to make sure that the city is still getting that per their requests and standards.
Okay, and just to, I guess, go through the rest of the list here, there's a separate 3 items with a separate subtotal beyond the 3.9 million, totaling some 675,000. And those are sort of Plan B or additional things that have been discussed that we might or might not actually have the money for, because it ends up totaling 4.6 million, which is more than we're going to be able to get out of a bond issuance.
That's correct. There are some optional items on the list that we will know over time whether or not we can do this. Certainly, there's a desire to expand the kinder care play area. That's an additional cost of it. We estimate it to be about around $100,000. There is the desire for us to continue to estimate, and we're working with the architect again now to look to see if we can have the original idea on the plans had something which is referred to as a wall hollow, and that provides a vertical play area for students. And I saw some pictures of it. It looks pretty exciting if we can do it. So we're looking at that as a potential benefit for our youngest children at the site. And then the third optional item is a potential change to the exterior stucco on the walls of the gym. So yes, we certainly are going to keep looking at this as time goes along, and we'll know more about the project and our ongoing, what we have remaining left in our in the ongoing contingency budget, which is obviously getting smaller at this time in the project. But as we go along, we'll keep making those best guesses. Now, we do have one other item that is not in the 4.6 million. We have other potential items that the city and district cut in cost savings effort early on in the project last year. And so those potential items, such as the type of fencing that we might use, some work on the sidewalk, the types of tables that were going to be that were in the original plans, were cut, and so, or changed or altered potentially. So we would like to have the ability to make sure that the facility for the community and the students is as originally planned as much as possible. So that's another potential cost of $0 to $783,000, not included in our $4.6 million estimate tonight.
But given our current picture of where we're in the project, most of the contingency is used up, how much we could pull out of a bond, it doesn't seem like we're going to get to too many, if any, of those items down in the other potential value engineering list, it seems to me.
We may or may not. Typically, at this time in the construction project, I think that we would want to make sure we have, so to speak, a reserve about $500,000 for contingency that may be spent between now and the end of the project. If some of that money is not spent, and we'll know more over the next few months as we get closer and closer and to the end of the project, then we'll be able to make some additional decisions in the spring that we may have some money for some of these. So it's a little hard to nail down a yes or no on some of them.
All right. Any other questions on this?
Just one other thing. Dr. Rubio, what are we looking for as far as future developer fees? I know there's a 5-year timeline and it's a rotating, or where are we at with those numbers as far as forecast for this year? I mean, anything from the city, information, that's what I'm basically getting at, as far as do we have numbers to associate with possible taking money from that?
We're working with the city on that now. We're trying to discern what projects are in the pipeline. I know some of those projects have been stalled, and so I don't have any hard numbers right now in terms of timing. I'm trying to work with the city also. One of the questions we had for the city just this week is in terms of timing, understanding when those developer fees, because they are paid first to the city, and the timing of when they come to us. So we haven't determined all of that, but right now we don't see anything coming anytime soon. We have quarters where no money comes in at all on developer fees, and we have other quarters where suddenly a project might be approved by the city, and then we know we have developer fees coming. But right now we don't have more information that's concrete.
Okay, so we've exhausted our developer fees currently.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do we have questions for any of our bond consultants, or? I had two. One was about insurance, and I don't know if this is something you would know, Superintendent, or there's an indication in the documents that the district may be getting insurance and may
Mr.
not.
Flores,
I don't
would
know
you mind
if
helping us with this one, or Chris?
is that insurance for what, and when do we have to decide that, and who decides that?
Good evening. My name is Emilio Flores, Caldwell Flores Winters. To answer your question, President Affelt, bond insurance is purchased by the majority of school districts issuing debt. What it does is it allows a district with a lower credit rating to borrow at a lower interest rate. What you're basically doing is you're paying a premium to borrow a larger institution that's more capitalized than your own, and borrowing their rating as you sell off to investors. The insurance acts as a backstop in the case if there was ever a GO bond default. If for some reason the county was unable to collect the property taxes and make the payments to bondholders, the insurance company would then step in, make the bondholders whole, and then would actually come back around and see what they can do to mitigate their damages. The bond insurance has never been used in the state of California for a GO bond. A school district GO bond has never defaulted in California. The reason why issuers use bond insurance is to access a lower rate of borrowing, because the bond insurance companies have a higher rating than most public school districts in California. In the case of Emory, you're currently rated a AA3. The AA3 rating standing on its own may warrant the same interest rates as the bond insurance company is holding. So it's an economic analysis that is done prior to the sale of bonds as to whether or not the cost of the premium is outweighed by the benefit in potential interest rates to the district. It's a mechanism in which districts use to garner a lower interest rate of borrowing. If it's determined at the time of sale that there is no economic benefit for the insurance, it is not purchased. If there is a economic benefit to the district, it is then purchased. It is paid for not out of it's not paid out of par amount or principal of the bonds. It's paid out of the premiums that are generated from the bond sale.
Very helpful. So that falls in the category of the sort of game day analysis that you all and our bond counsel make based on what's the most cost-effective way to proceed.
That's correct. At the time of pricing, we, as a courtesy to the county, we invite Alameda County to participate in the pricing call. Also on the call as well is the underwriting team, people who are actually selling the bonds. The district representatives, in this case, would be Dr. Rubio and CFW as acting as financial advisor for the district. Going into the pricing, we will know what our rating is. In fact, Dr. Rubio met with Moody's about a week ago to make his case about where our current economic conditions are, where we have benefited from the economy recovering, and we expect to have a rating from Moody's early next week. If we maintain our rating, it is possible that we will utilize insurance, but if it is deemed to be economic for us to use it, we will. If for any reason our rating would be downgraded due to the financial conditions of either the local economy or the school district, then we would consider using, we more than likely would have to use insurance to garner those lower rates.
Okay, that's helpful. I mean, these are lengthy, but yeah, legal documents. We've had lawyers vet this. We've done these before, so you know, I'm relying on your expertise and really our bond counsel's expertise that these things are in order. But I would say that I think it may be a typo, or I don't know, but where the board member, the only other comment I had was kind of minor. The board member terms is either off or incomplete. There were some blanks for how long board member terms were. And
Yes.
I couldn't tell if, so that's just something to take care of.
Just for the board's information and also for the public's information as well, the documents are presented, the POS, the preliminary official statement, is presented to you in substantially complete form. Over the next couple of days, we will spend time with district staff as well as bond counsel to complete the documents prior to posting it for investor review. At this time, we anticipate having that out to investors probably Tuesday or Wednesday before Thanksgiving, at which time they'll have over a week before they will participate in the sale of the bonds.
So if we approve this, the documents would be finalized and out by Tuesday of next week? Is that what you're saying?
Tuesday, latest would be Wednesday.
Okay. And then when would you anticipate the sale actually happening?
The sale of bonds is currently slated for December 2nd, which is, I believe, the Wednesday following Thanksgiving. That's well before the December 15th, 16th date of the Fed, which, as you may recall from the previous board meetings,
That was my next question.
is an event that a lot of people are anxious about. Indications are from the last Fed minutes that they are looking to increase rates. There is an argument to be made, obviously, that if they increase it from 0 to 0.25, what is that effect going to be? For most school districts and most borrowers, it does have an effect. In this particular case, we are dealing with a very constrained revenue stream. What's allowing us to issue these bonds right now is the growth in assessed valuation, the current interest rates, and any volatility in that interest rate will affect the district's ability to access principal in a form of a current interest bond, which is the most efficient way of borrowing for school districts. So if for some reason the market goes crazy and we lose half percentage to a percentage, it will impact the district's ability to access the full amount of the bonds in a current interest bond structure. We do not anticipate that occurring at this time, but it is something that we do need to make you aware of, especially since, as you may see on the bond documents, the resolution does state that the bond amount is not to exceed $4.5 million. The closer we get to, or the higher amount we get to, the more finite that revenue stream becomes, and the more susceptible it is to interest rate movement.
Right. And that, at least my reading of the Wall Street Journal is that the Fed is not anticipating raising 0.5% to 1%, but something a little more gradual.
Right now, they're looking to raise something a little more gradual than that. But what you have to remember is that or as you may recall, the Fed is an indicator, and everything is built off of that. And so, for instance, the Fed is the prime rate, and the school district is a couple notches below a prime rate. And so the spread from the indices is where you're going to see the movement. So if the Fed moves a 0.25%, the amplification could occur in other markets, whether it be bond markets, or school bond markets, whether it be housing bonds and so forth, depending on your credit worthiness, that amplitude could change, or the magnitude could change of the effect.
Got it. All right. Other questions for Mr. Flores?
Just one minor one.
Your mic is dead again.
Great. It's dying. Now, just a quick question. My name is DONN. Please change it.
We will also we'll pass it on to bond counsel.
Thank you.
Gotta get the right name. Oh.
Sorry. So, thank you for, I appreciate the information because I was curious what the tax base or the top 20, I think it was. That word's gone already. But this was really helpful data, just in general about, how things are portioned out in the city, and to see the residential to commercial use. So that was very useful. So in terms of the meeting with Moody's, how soon will we know? But you said that we're AAA3?
No, we're AA3.
AA3?
AA3, which is 3 notches below a AAA.
Wow.
Is what we're currently at. And AAA is the highest. The presentation went very well. The local economy has improved dramatically since our last presentation to Moody's, which was back in 2012. As you may recall, in 2012, the district's financial position started to improve. There was a lot of one-time money and federal grants that came in that artificially inflated the fund balance. And so we did have to walk the rating agency through, how that fund balance has been spent down over the last couple of years. And you're going from a fund balance reserve of 50%, over 50%, back down to something that's a little more normal, around 20, 25%. We did have to walk them through that. However, in terms of development, the city has a lot of data about development, both pending projects as well as status of completion. The monthly reports came very much in handy from the city to show that not only is construction being realized, but more of it's coming down the line and the current status of those projects. At this point, we do anticipate having a Moody's to go to what they call committee. What happens is the analysts will actually take all information that was provided by the district, and they'll put it into a rubric. They then present their rating to a committee of other analysts that are throughout the country, New York, Dallas, San Francisco, and they could even have some people from London participate as well, depending on timing. And then that committee actually either affirms or recommends changes to that rating provided by the analyst, at which time a rating is then published. That process, once they go to committee, takes about 48 hours. So if they go to committee tomorrow, we could have it probably by late Friday at the earliest. But right now we're anticipating having that rating back to us probably on Monday or Tuesday of next week, at which time we will post the finalized preliminary official statement with the corrected names for the trustees.
Identity, right, okay.
And terms.
Details. Thanks.
I would just add, if you don't mind, that the conversation I thought went really well with Moody's. Doris Sue and I were able to walk through the 3-year budgets and explain pretty well all the questions that they had, and the analysts we were talking to seemed pretty, I thought they were pretty positive and upbeat about the conversation, so I thank you for helping us with that.
And one thing I would add to that is the analyst is actually the same analyst that was there in 2012. There was some institutional knowledge there, which was very helpful. We do try to make sure that we have a similar analyst or someone who's familiar with the district when we go to these rating agencies, because oftentimes some of the institutional knowledge on their side is lost. And we find it as a great benefit if the analyst is familiar with the area. Our analyst was actually out of New York. However, he was recently living in San Francisco. When he first moved here, he actually moved to Emeryville. And so he was very familiar with the area and understood its importance to the region and the services it provides to the regions and its residents.
Okay. Is there no further board member comments?
We're not on comments, we're on questions, I thought.
Questions?
We get to just public comment
Yeah,
and discussion.
I'm going to go to public comment.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm in the right spot.
Okay.
Just for my clarity.
Any further questions?
No.
Okay. Any public comment on this side? Okay. Any board member discussion?
So, I have strong concerns that we are going to the edge on the board's credit card, and we are putting all our eggs in a flawed basket. And I had planned to urge board members to think about that this is it for us. You know, we've tapped into all of our contingency funds. We've tapped into the developer fees. Now we want to tap into this small amount of bonding capacity that we have left. But I realize that based on what I have seen this evening, it would fall on deaf ears. And so I think I'm going to go in a different direction and simply say that at this point, because this is what the discussion was behind closed doors with the other 3 voting members of the board in attendance, that I'm forced to not pretend like it's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to vote for this bond measure, because that's the only thing I can think of that was the topic of discussion when the 3 of you met with Mr. Baker and Mr. Rubio this evening. And so I will be proceeding with the cure and correct on that as well, because it's inconceivable that 3 board members would be behind closed doors and think that that's an acceptable thing to do, particularly when a $5 million bond measure is on, you know. And so I just going to throw that out there. I'll be voting no on this because I don't want to take this district even more in jeopardy than it is by maxing out our credit. And I am saddened that we are in a situation where we're meeting behind closed doors to discuss financial matters. And you can tell me, because I suspect there'll be protests, that that's not what you're doing, but it's the Finance Committee. The list is there. Apparently this has been happening on a basis throughout the year. And so it makes me wonder how many votes have been predetermined. And so I am saddened that that's the direction that we're in as a board, and that's where we are. But it's clear that that's where we're at. So I'll be urging you to vote no on this, but I know that you guys have already decided yes. I think the term that you've used in the past is cabal, so I'll use that term. You know, and you'll win out in the end because the Brown Act is pretty tepid, but I'm just disgusted by that behavior. So, thank you.
Well, let me respond to that, Mr. Pats. And once again, you're speaking without knowledge, with sweeping statements and accusations that are really inappropriate. Really inappropriate, going on throughout the year. Let me explain what happened. The superintendent, as you know, because we have had this discussion before, has his own committees. And the purpose of the superintendent's finance committee or the superintendent's facilities committee is to enable the superintendent to prepare for board meetings and present information and action items to this board in public. No more than two members of the board can serve on a superintendent's committee and participate on a superintendent's committee, because that would violate the Brown Act. No more than two members serve on any superintendent's committee. I should also point out that you have indicated from day one that you don't wish to serve on any superintendent's committee, and you haven't, although it remains completely open to you. Today, for the first time I can recall that I've been on the Finance Committee over the space of 2 years or so now, a third board member came to observe, and that is completely within the Brown Act and appropriate. Not participate. No decisions were made. No decisions were put forth. This list was discussed by the members of the Finance Committee and the superintendent so that we could facilitate a public discussion here with the public and the other board members who, amongst all of us, frankly, because we were not discussing the bond motion that is in front of us right now. So that was the purpose of the Finance Committee meeting today, was to understand for us what exactly is on this list, what is our needs going forward, specifically, given where we're at now, given that we have a pool, given where our contingencies are at, given that our developer fees are being used up. So that is completely appropriate. Mr. Merriam had an interest in attending because he is on the Facilities Committee, and he voluntarily came to observe this discussion so he could be better prepared for the discussion we are now having in public. You too could have come, as I informed you, but you haven't participated in any other committees, so that wasn't sort of a natural sort of thing, but I have no problem if you want to come and observe superintendent committee meetings. So that is what happened today, and you know, your really inappropriate accusations are exactly that, inappropriate. Do we have other
I'd like to respond.
discussion or comments on this item?
Yeah, I'd like
You
to
may.
respond to that. You know, I think that
I got time for this. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
This is, you know what? I have been on this board for more years than I even realized. I don't have a kid in this town at all. I have a niece. I've gone here myself. I have never been accused of anything as ridiculous as what you just said. I am so insulted. And frankly, I got a lot going on in my world. All of us do. We do not need additional BS to sit here and support the students and the kids and the families of this town. I don't understand it. I get that you have something you want to say, and maybe you took it and you assumed or whatever. I have had to run this week. I'm sorry, I'm full because 2 weeks going, I have somebody in the hospital and I'm there every night. And her child is at elementary school. And this is what I'm doing. And I'm sitting here listening to this as if somebody impugns me. It's ridiculous. I'm not taking that. I'm stepping down from this board, but at the same time, it's not fair for this board to be accused of BS. That is total BS. I can't even believe you said that. And I can't even believe my reaction because I'm full. So I'm ready to vote because I got to go. I'm trying to get to Kaiser. So, sorry.
So,
Actually, I'm gonna step out.
yeah. So again, I hope I'm wrong, but the appearances of impropriety are that. And, you know, it's not a public meeting. It's been made clear to me they aren't public meetings. It's not agendized. And maybe I'm wrong in my interpretation of the Brown Act, and I'm fine with that. But doesn't mean that I don't, doesn't change the fact that you had 3 board members behind a closed door, and you can sit there and say, oh, yes, Mr. Merriam just discussed it. But again, I'll go back to the comment, I asked Mr. Rubio.
I said Mr. Merriam did not discuss it.
That's what I'm sorry if I misspoke. That's what I intended to say. But I asked Mr. Rubio, I said, that seems odd to me. And he said, oh, yeah, we've done this.
I'm going to help you on this before you misquote me. I
Okay,
said it
please.
is very rare that we do this.
Very rare, but that implied to me that it's been done before.
I believe in the past, at least on one occasion, I can't recall if there was more than that, where there was an additional board member who was interested in the topic, and they similarly, very professionally, sat there and did not participate, upholding their oath of office. So yes, I believe that happened on one other occasion.
And again, I have trepidation, but it's one of those things of, I don't know what to say. I see 3 people coming out from behind a closed door who, were bound by the Brown Act. And if not the letter of the law, which I'm not so good at parsing, but the spirit of it. And you can say, oh, I could have come to this meeting, and that to me would have just made the situation worse, right? We would have now had 4 members of the board behind closed doors having a conversation. And, I'm glad you're appalled. I think that's the appropriate response, because that's what it appears like. And so, and again, I hope I'm wrong, but it just looks that way.
Okay. Member Merriam?
May I add something? I normally don't let my emotions get too much to me, but to have a fellow sitting board member accuse me of violating the Board Act is I'm left speechless. For you to say that I violated the Brown Act with no evidence whatsoever, just what you see, I can't condone that behavior or that insinuation. That's all I've got to say.
All right, if we can return to the topic at hand, is there any other comments on the content of the item 8.7? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Maybe we have a roll call?
Member Dice?
Yes.
Member Merriam?
Yes.
Member Pats?
No.
President Affelt?
Yes. Superintendent, the next item, please, is 8.8.
Thank you. The next item is similar but different. It is requesting and recommending approval of Resolution Number 7, the issuance and sale of the 2015 general obligation refunding bonds. This resolution authorizes the issuance of a series of refunding bonds to refinance a portion of the district's older outstanding general obligation bonds in order to fully take advantage of lower interest rates and to lower the debt service presently being paid on such bonds as a benefit, I believe, to our taxpayers.
Do we have any questions on this item? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Apologies for a previous outburst. Had a moment. So just to remind that this one is specifically for previous bonds, and that we'd have the opportunity to have savings occur. You may have to be very much more eloquent than my question. But,
not a problem.
Thank you.
Just to remind the board, this is a separate resolution. This is to approve the issuance of refunding bonds. This is a refunding of the district's 2005 bonds that are outstanding. The purpose of this bond issuance is to refinance those outstanding bonds at a lower interest rate and provide taxpayer savings. In combination with the new issuance of bonds as well, it will also defray the cost of the bonds across the 2 issuances. This bond resolution is shown as a separate item. As you may recall from reading the preliminary official statement, these bonds are included in the preliminary official statement as well. that was approved in the previous motion. Once again, if at the time of the bond sales, if there is significant interest rate movement, it is something that is even more sensitive to interest rate movement than the new money bonds in terms of savings that are generated. And so at this point, you would be approving the resolution for the refunding bonds as well.
Thanks. Sorry.
Other questions? Any public comment on this item, 8.8? Discussion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second was done.
Member Merriam seconded. Yes, well, I think like this is going to save us money. It's going to save the taxpayer money. I think these bond funds are well used to build the facility that we want to need. I'm going to support it.
Just a clarification, the refunding bonds do not generate new proceeds for construction.
No, I understand.
Okay,
I'm
just want- I just-
referring back to the whole package because it is one package.
Just want to make that clarification.
I got it. A roll call, please.
Member Dice?
Yes.
Member Merriam?
Yes.
Member Pats?
No.
President Affelt?
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, for your presentation coming out tonight. Superintendent, we're on to 8.9, the amendment to administrative regulation.
Yes, good evening. Ms. Harrell is with us tonight this evening still to help us understand and move forward on the first reading or final action up to the board tonight to consider approval an amendment to one of our admin regulations regarding temporary and substitute employee sick leave. There is a new Healthy Workplace, Healthy Families Act, AB 1522, in effect now, which requires school districts to grant paid sick leave to all employees who work 30 days or more per year, including temporary and substitute employees. So, Ms. Harrell, would you like to summarize this in any way for the board?
You've summarized it fairly nicely. Just in being in compliance with the Healthy Families Act, employees who've been temporary or substitute employees who've been employed for 90 days and have actually put in 30 days of seat time work are to be granted sick leave in one of two forms. Either the accrual method where they get 1 hour for every 30 hours worked, or they get a flat 24 hours at the beginning of each year. We are requesting that we adopt the upfront grant method. I have given Dr. Rubio a worksheet with some information I had gathered on what other districts are doing and some of the rationale as to why. The accrual method requires a lot of paperwork, monitoring, and there's one step in there that kind of holds up the payroll processing because of some manual entries that has to be done for each employee. Whereas the upfront method, and with the accrual method, there is the fiscal liability because some of the days can carry forward for year after year. Whereas with the upfront method, there is not that carryover, so there limits that, there won't be that fiscal liability. So at this point, I can answer questions that may help you all in determining which method we are allowed to use, understanding that we would request that we be allowed to use the granting method. And I've prepared a modification to the AR in the board packet.
I might add for the board's information that 6 districts are planning, as far as we know, to do the same method: Alameda, Albany, Castro Valley, Dublin, New Haven, and Oakland Unified, and the County Office of Education. I believe
granting method.
The granting method, and I believe my guess is that their rationale is similar to ours, even though we're much smaller. That to have to go through and account on a monthly basis for every hour that a part-time substitute or temporary employee has worked, to enter that into an HR or fiscal system and track that monthly, to then notify employees at the time that they hit the sufficient number of hours, and to then allow that leave to accumulate over the years. I'm mixing the methods
Right.
up already, and to not allow that leave to accumulate over the year in the granting method is beneficial for the, and maybe more feasible.
I have some specific statements from some of the districts. One district said it's less time consuming for payroll staff, which makes it more efficient. It's less labor intensive and less costly than accrual. We don't have the manpower to do it, and we don't have the staff to support the accrual. So we know that they are due the hours. We know that they're due the time. It's simply a matter of how we do it. And the districts that support our district, that support me in particular, and I'll speak the largest one being the ACOE, those districts are using the grant method.
Last piece of information for the board is that, we did obviously want to go back and check, and I think President Affelt also made the request as well. Last year, only 5 of our substitutes actually met the requirements based on the number of days and that they put in, that they would have been granted any sick leave time.
Correct. And the cost of those 3 days at the substitute rate for those individuals, it would have been $2,400.
So our recommendation is that we ask the board to allow us to use the granting method, because we think that that's the most beneficial overall for us. Wasn't actually what I thought when I first read this and thought about it, but that's the conclusion I came to.
Okay. My question is, I guess, some confusion about the language in here, because it's, as I understand it, you don't really get the 24 hours until you have done 2 things. Worked for 30 days as a substitute, and been, I guess, I don't know, how do you even count the 90? Is
Here we
it
are.
90 days after the start of the year, or you're not really employed with us for 90 days?
It's 90 days from the day you're hired as a substitute or temporary worker. So if you're hired
For the first time?
Yeah.
Because it's not like you're a permanent Emory employee substitute. We just used you. I know we use people over and over many times.
Once a substitute goes on our certificate or our classified list, they're on the list until they tell us that they don't want to be on the list. Some people have been substitutes for years in our district. So if
That
you're-
we don't even use, but they're on our list?
Some of them, there are reasons sometimes why they don't use, but there are some on the list that we don't use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some on the list that we look at, and if we see that we really haven't used them, I make them inactive. So there are not a lot that we don't use.
So that maybe it's
what you're
the-
asking, does that possibility exist? Yes, there are people who would be on our list since last year, so they've been on our list for 90 days, which would make them eligible to begin accruing. But until they actually work, put in 30 days of what I call seat time, they cannot use the sick leave.
So it's maybe it's not 90th day of, it says employment, being put on a list. Is
Being
that
put on
the
a list.
triggering?
That's what that references. Once we
Is that how other districts talk
Yes.
about it?
We had a meeting about it, and that's after a lot of confusion and different, but yeah, that's how we look at it. From the date a person is hired
Yeah.
or put on a sub list, the working man's understanding is if I'm put on your list, you're hired. So while the words
Yeah.
kind of get legally and specifically, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because
but
I'm coming at it from a legal perspective
for
as
the
an
average
employment
working man's understanding-
lawyer, where that's not employment.
I
You're
understand
not
what
an
you're
employee
saying.
at that point.
I understand
but
what you're
okay.
saying, but for this intents and these practices and these purposes, the date that they're put on the list as a sub is considered the hired date. So they have to have actually been.
So you might add that, that the date that the individual is put on the substitute list is considered the higher date.
Thus,
for
okay,
for purposes of this regulation.
Will constitute higher date for this purpose.
I'll let you finish writing.
Okay.
You got that? So then you say they don't actually get the 24 hours until they've worked for 30 days.
Well, here's where
Right.
we are.
But you've got, so the language that is confused is that 24 hours sick leave will be granted at the beginning of each school work year, or be
And-
granted 24 hours of paid upon hire. They'll be granted 20. So it's like, you get it as soon as you get on that list. You just can't use it until you've worked 30. Is that?
The language came from CSBA. That's there's, well,
That doesn't necessarily mean
okay, maybe
I'm
not
gonna
not
I'm
lie
gonna
to
li-
you, but
believe
okay.
it's good language.
I looked at them for some guidance.
Okay.
And a lot of the HR directors do. So that language came from CSBA. And the understanding is, yes, upon being put on the list at the beginning of the year, the 24 hours are made available to you. They are there. However, now here comes the big however, the yes but. Until you have been on our list for 90 days and have worked for 30 days, you cannot use it. You cannot access it.
So the tension, so maybe you're saying in the first sentence that a substitute employee.
We can restructure this. We
Yeah.
can get offline. We can restructure this. I'll restructure it and use any assistance you can lend me.
Okay, yeah. So I'm happy to help, but my suggestion was simply to say that instead of saying you're entitled to paid sick leave at the 30-day mark, you're entitled to use the paid sick
What
leave.
sentence is that?
It's the very first one.
Second one, entitled to.
The very first sentence,
Entitled to.
the last clause. Instead of is entitled to paid sick leave. is
Okay, I'm
entitled
up here
to-
at effective July 1, so get me to where you are.
Keep,
Second line, okay, is entitled to use
Their paid sick
sick
leave.
leave. Okay,
Because you later say they're granted it on day one.
that's.
And
the-
then
yeah,
this
that's
sentence
direction.
says they're entitled to it on day 30. It just seemed to be in tension.
I understand what you're
Okay.
saying, because as I was reading it, I'm thinking,
All right, so what I would, yeah, we need to do it. Happy to go with the staff recommendation of the grant method. I would just say we clean up
Clean up this.
some of these edits accordingly, and
Mhm.
I'm happy to help take another look at
I'll be.
a revised draft,
I'll
if
get
that-
something.
if the board so directs.
Oh,
Um,
well, I would like to so request, so hopefully the board will so direct.
Okay, well, let's see if there are any other questions or comments.
Mhm.
Is that right? Is this, yeah, can we bring,
Yes, sir.
is there any need to adopt this tonight, or you
This
can
is the
bring it
first
back?
reading.
Okay,
Answer
right.
questions, address concerns.
so there we go.
I can bring it, I want to bring it back, try to bring it back December. Any other questions? that-
Any other questions?
I think
Member,
clarity is best.
Okay.
okay, Member Pats?
No, I'm good. I'm familiar with these, and we have to do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, grant or accrual, where you are?
I'm sorry?
I was asking Member Pats if you're aware.
I'm accrual, but I could be persuaded either way.
Mhm. Okay. Any public comment on this item? Seeing none? And I guess it's not an action item tonight. We'll make some edits and see you next time. All right, thank you. All right, that takes us to the next item, which is slowly coming up on my computer. 8.10, process to fill board vacancy.
Yes, good evening again. 8.10 is being brought to the board to receive information on how a vacancy of the Board of Trustees can be filled. As the board and the public may know, Ms. Dice, after all of her many important years that we appreciate greatly, Ms. Dice, this is a reminder. Thank you so much for everything you've done. I greatly appreciate it. Has resigned her position as she has to move out of the community. And so in front
Not
of you,
yet.
oh, not yet, not just yet, but in front of you, we have a procedural item regarding how, asking the board how they would like to move forward to fill that vacancy resulting from Ms. Dice's resignation, with there being two options. Number one, filling the position by provisional appointment, or number two, calling for a special election.
Questions on this item? Yes, member Barron.
I'll speak loud enough then.
No, use this one. Yeah, she gave me one.
I just wanted to know about history, how I believe some of the members of a current board came onto the board in this similar fashion. So is, going through the election process, is it warranted, or is it necessary because of the cost, or is it an obligation for the community? So my question is just field input on how is it done before.
Well, you've been here the longest. Why don't you answer?
Yeah, I'll just say, I know that it's usually been about $30,000 has been the cost for a special election. It's probably more now. And it's because of some of the time constraints, the 60 days, there's a lot that would have to be done too. But historically, it has been appointment. And probably even before my seat came up for a similar situation that a board member was leaving, moving out of town. And so it's been appointments since then, whenever we had a vacancy that took place, just because it's really cost prohibitive. I mean, that's really what's been the driver. And I think even now, Alameda County, the special election costs are pretty extensive because of the different things. I don't think we're as progressive as Marin County. I think they just had their first paper or, mail-in election or something like that. But it's always been cost-driven.
Yeah, I thought you've got the information in item 811 that the cost will range $29,000 to $40,000.
Which we really don't have at this time.
No.
It'd be a big burden for our district.
It would be, it's 2/3 of a teacher or half a teacher. So yeah, that's not an easy lift. So, Superintendent, what's the difference between item 810 and 811? Process to fill is it seems 810 it seems like they're the same thing, ultimately.
Oh, that actually is a great question.
811 seems to be the...
I think first you have to vote. The board needs to take a vote, I think, first procedurally, which method you're going to use. Let me make sure I have this correct.
So 810
I'm
is just
sorry.
the
810 is just information. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
811 is the actual...
811 is the actual. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, any other comments on 810 on the information? None. Any public comment on 810? Okay, let's move to 811. And
Thank you. Sorry about that. So 811 is the action item to determine, to make a vote for the board to take action on which method you'll be using. My apologies.
okay, any questions on that before we turn to public comment and discussion?
Just a thought. Oh, what did you say? I'm sorry.
Question before we turn to public comment or discussion.
Oh, no.
It's more of a discussion-y kind of thing. Okay. Any public comment on item 811 and which method we should use? Seeing none, discussion.
I was just going to note for those in the public, and I'm sure people know about terms, but my current term was to end next year, so it's less than a year. And I do think it's worth, and this is just my pitch to anyone watching. Apologies for my outburst earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
Don't be, no.
I got a lot going on in my head. But I do want to encourage those who, it's just my moment to encourage people because it has been difficult to find people who have a sincere interest in the lives of our students. And I think, not to say that people don't have it, but it's time commitment. I was told that it would be like 2 meetings a month and like 2 hours a month, and that was a lie from the day one. So, but I do think it's important to, find our the next leader in our community, and definitely those people. This is an opportunity to kind of test drive. You want a sense of what it feels like to be in a position of listening and weighing heavy decisions. Nothing here is done lightly, and I think it's really important. And I would encourage, community members to, especially those that feel like they can represent, to the fullest the kids of the community. I think it's really important. So that's just my little plug for it.
Okay. Thank you for that. Further discussion on this item?
No, I would just add, I wasn't going to walk through it at this late time in the evening, but for anyone watching, we did include in the packet the relevant ed code and regulations concerning the process.
Yeah, the one clarification on that you sort of, I know because I asked you reached out to the county to sort of clarify the timing. Maybe you could.
Sure, I can elaborate on that. Just we wanted to make sure we confirm with the county that our past practice and our understanding of what we've done in the past is still correct, that the vacancy must be filled either from the date of the filing of the letter to the county or the date of the vacancy, which is lined up exactly with our board policy. So the county was able to confirm that for us.
And the date of the vacancy in Ms. Dice's case is the date that she made effective in her letter.
That's correct.
Which is
December the 6th, I believe.
6th or 15th?
6th.
December 6th. Okay.
Daddy's birthday.
All right. Your dad's birthday. A day before Pearl Harbor Day. Okay. All right. December 6th. So 60 days from there, which is in February. Okay. So do we have a motion on whether to go by election or provisional appointment?
I'll move we go by appointment.
I second it.
Okay, roll call.
Member Dice?
Yes.
Member Marion? Yes. Member Pats?
Yes.
President Affelt?
Yes. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. And now we are on to item 812, which is the application and selection process.
That's right. It's my understanding, and this is my first time as a superintendent to go through this process, but it's my understanding that in the past the board has desired to look at different applications to use for the process. So the purpose of this item is for the Board of Trustees to determine which application and selection that they would like to use for filling the vacancy.
All right, any questions on that? Seeing none, any public comment on the application? Seeing none, discussion. And the other piece of this is the timeline.
Timeline,
Yeah.
Oh.
Why don't we do timeline first?
Sorry.
Ms. Tamery is handed out.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. On the proposed timeline, we have the notice of vacancy, which we would distribute to the Oakland Post, the Oakland Tribune, City of Emeryville E-News, the Wednesday packet at NEH that goes home with parents, to the PTOs. We would use the auto dialer message, the district website, and we would do an email to our parents. We would do that on the timeline by Friday, November the 20th. Applications would be available as hard copies and online on the same date, on the 20th. The application period closes at the end of the business day on Thursday, December 10th, with applications and packets being sent to board members on the 11th of December. The board would decide on which applicants to interview, and that decision would take place on Wednesday, December the 16th. The board would decide on interview questions at the same meeting on this December the 16th. Candidates would be notified. Those candidates to be interviewed would be notified on the 17th, and the board would conduct interviews on Wednesday, January the 13th. The board would then have the option then to make the decision that evening in that meeting, or to defer decision to the meeting of January 27th.
Gives you some time. Can I note, I would add one thing to the notice of vacancy distribution list. The one where you send the agenda out should probably include, I think, that group of folks who've
so our
indicated interest
usual
in the
email list.
district. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
And just to, because, hey, I got nothing but time to talk. I'm just kidding. But I think it would be a really great, I like this schedule for the board to consider, because 8 and 9, you have time to kind of really think about it. Because it's hard to try to push a whole lot into a short window. Just as you would in, filling any vacancy, anything, you want to give yourself time to reflect and think about, and really that opportunity to deliberate. So I think it's great to have that space in there to kind of sleep on it, more or less. I'll just offer that thought.
It's good on that end. Kind of looking at it, I actually don't. I think it's too compressed on the front end. I'd like to make sure, we give enough time for the application to be out there, being circulated, the notice. We can send another email, another robocall.
Slide that in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any need to really only make the application period about 10 or 20 days. Let people think about it over Christmas, and I'd say bring it in the new year. And then we figure out how to, it's not going to take that long to read applications and talk to people. We can do that in January. I don't have particular dates in my mind right now at the moment, but.
And are these teed up to meetings that are already set, basically, to regular meetings? Yeah.
The only thing we have to watch that Ms. Teamer is reminding me of is we just have to ensure that we've completed the process by February the 4th. So let's back, just make sure I'm following you here. So
February the 4th is that a board meeting date?
No.
That's
60 days.
That's 60 days
Yeah.
from the 6th, because we have two 31-month
Right.
months in between, huh? Okay.
Now what we could do is we could extend the application period until the 15th of December, close the business day, and add another 5 days. I know that's not exactly what you were conveying, but I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, I'd still like to figure out a way to.
Oh, that wouldn't give you much time to review them, I see. They'd have to do that during the meeting.
Wait, when are our meetings in January?
The 13th and 27th.
27th, right?
If you
Oh.
decide to stay for the second Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we-
Okay. Well, we better, because I just got my organization to change its board meetings after a year of trying. So why couldn't we get applications sometime the first week of January?
If you get the applications in January, Let's see here then.
Decide to interview.
Must have a special meeting.
Yeah, unless we have it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm usually at a conference on the 13th, but I can make it work.
Oh, it's the Monterey?
Yeah.
Oh, that reminds me. I may miss the February meeting for a conference. Reminding me of that.
Well, I'd rather go with a special meeting, which would probably be relatively short, to do, one of these functions, whether it's, a meeting on the 11th to decide who to interview on the 13th, or a meeting on the 15th to interview people, or what is the interview questions?
Opportunity for a special meeting, but I know everybody's calendars are crazy though, so. The only thing.
I get, do we have to pick these dates tonight? I mean, I think getting out the notice of the vacancy, we can do that, get that moving.
Yeah, we can take some time to work on this.
Figure out, we can talk about what questions should be on the application, we can get that moving.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
But
you
then
know what day
at the
you're gonna
next,
conduct the interviews in January or something.
that I think complexifies things, if we try to figure that out. But we could figure that out at the next,
December 2nd.
yeah. I mean, that's just an email to the
2 weeks.
X number of people that apply in 2 weeks that says this is when interviews are going to be set. That would be my recommendation, that we kind of look at this. Ms. Marie can check people's calendars for different potential special
Mm-hmm.
meeting dates if we need to go that route.
Well, I assume with the idea maybe an additional January meeting. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
How does that sound to folks? Yeah. You're on thin ice, but
Melody says it's fine.
yeah. Okay. Member Pats?
Yeah, I think that's the only way.
Okay. But that need not hold up our getting a notice out.
Mm-mm. No.
Except that, I think with the notice comes the date that they're due, so we need a date.
Oh, that, yeah.
That's a good point.
Just keep that 15th then, right? I mean, if you keep a month. Are you saying,
My suggestion was changing that to the 15th.
Well, and I would pick a
you
date that's
think
like January 6th.
oh, so you're going after.
Yeah. And
Is the
that
office
gives,
open? District office open through, is it closed?
For which days? I'm sorry.
That winter.
Well, we're pretty much open.
you're open the
okay.
4th, I assume,
Yeah.
school's back in session.
Yeah, but during the break we're open.
Mhm.
So like after the first of the year, what's that? I don't know the dates. I'm sorry.
This Monday.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, why do we want so much time for them to get the applications back?
We want to get it's the notice period and circulation. Just sort of like, we've kind of seen with the gym naming committee and it can be hard to,
Yeah.
it's certainly an issue with board folks of making sure, we have good and, good pool of candidates. So I think that's a key step here, is getting a pool.
So your thought is there's more time to keep getting word out and for community members to apply?
Yes,
Okay.
and that, so we get the notice, we can do a couple rounds of notice, and, say January 6th, and then that gives us almost a month to read them, talk to people, interview them, and decide. Just with 2 regular board meetings, I think we could do it. Maybe it's 1 additional special meeting.
So are you suggesting, just for clarification, the January the 6th would be the or the 5th maybe would be the deadline for the applications, with a potential special on the 6th.
I'm not going beyond the deadline for the application because that's all Ms. Tamarese thinks we need for now.
Okay, so maybe we should go for
we're doing it.
January the 5th.
Yeah.
I think we'll go for the 5th.
And let's at least adopt the due date.
Okay. So January 5th, and then we still have the question of which application the board would like to use, I think, right?
Yeah, and the timeline, but we're not going to do the timeline. Ms. Tamer is going to poll people, and you'll come back with some different proposals.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, their application that looked better, and we're not limited to these exact 3 versions. We can make a completely new one. We can add to. We can combine. It's up to us. Let me ask if there are any. I didn't see any further questions about the application.
Did we want to select which of the 3?
Yeah, I'm going to just ask for public comment, and then we'll have the discussion and do that part. Is any public comment? Seeing none. Okay, now let's discuss which of the 3 or some version thereof.
I would suggest that the board doesn't mind me. The most thorough struck me as Exhibit B.
Other thoughts?
C is weak. Is it C or A? Sorry. A is very long.
I liked B as well.
I like B as well. Are there additional as I said, we're not stuck with exactly the B that's here just because we've used it before. If we're going to go in that direction, are there additional things people would like to add or take away from B? Just seemed B had everything that the other ones did. Yeah. Seemed to be the most comprehensive.
Any thoughts around, oh, it's there, so yeah, it's the same thing, but see the basic purpose of our public schools or something. I think it was this question. That's a trick question. Yeah, it looked like everything is covered. Just a format difference. And you have if they've been part of previous committees and things like that, so. You may have to just add the point that it's more than 2 hours every 2 weeks.
Well, that you've already put that out there, which has now eliminated
Scared people,
half of the pool.
It's a breeze. It's easy. It's easy. You get used to it. It's easy.
I would add, two questions come to mind. One is specifically asking people what their understanding and view is of the ECCL project, and two is what is their commitment to contributing to effective board functioning.
Did you say board functions, remember?
Functioning.
Functioning, thank you.
Commitment to contributing to effective board functioning.
Okay.
Any other thoughts for or against, or for or against other ideas?
Don't laugh, I have a question. Why do we have business address? Because they should be a resident, so I always wondered about
the
that.
application?
Maybe it spills over from like COC or some
maybe
other.
That's what it is, huh? Okay.
That's a good point.
Because we don't want to, make it clear you must be a resident. Can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but, oh, that's point.
There's a cover letter that goes with this.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's got to be in the notice, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, they'll get that, hopefully. Okay.
Where do we ask business residents?
In the front.
Oh, business address,
Yeah.
you're right. Do we ask people for a resume?
They usually add it. Some people attach it, but they don't normally add it.
People usually do, but
Like an optional. You'll run a lot of people away with that. resume
Really?
requirement. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
well then, I mean,
You have a lot of retirees.
uh-huh.
I just want
Oh,
to,
yeah,
before you go
they're
there,
not-
you got a lot of
yeah,
retirees who are
okay.
not filling out no resumes to submit to no school board.
If-
I mean, you just,
Yeah.
But
Well,
you can note it that if you
yes.
have it.
Well, then I would suggest an additional question of an individual's background and training that they believe qualifies them to be on the school board.
Well, being a resident.
Well, in
I'm
the
just playing
strictest
with you.
sense,
I'm just playing.
yeah.
But yeah.
But and I would say feel free to attach a resume.
Was that a third question, Mr. Rico?
Please describe your background and training and employment history to the extent you believe it helps qualify you to serve on the school board.
Please describe your background and training to the extent that it helps you serve on the school board.
And employment history. To the extent you believe it will help you serve on the school board. Okay? Should we move to adopt this, or are people still adding stuff or thinking? All right. Do we have a motion to adopt application B as amended by 3 items that have been recommended?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Member Dice?
Yes.
Member Merriam? Member Pats?
Yes.
President Affelt?
Yes. Okay, we're through that, and that concludes our action items. We're on to board reports and announcements. Do we have any board reports or announcements?
So a couple of people have come up to me and asked that I talk about our food and nutrition at the elementary school. They have not asked about the high school. There's some concerns about sugary cereal for breakfast. I think Cocoa Puffs are often mentioned. There's concern about pizza for breakfast and the same pizza being for lunch. And I know just from my experience, there's should be a menu as part of the requirements for getting the government funds. So I'd like to request a copy of it so I can sort of make sure that that's not accurate information. Is that possible? Would be the question.
Sure, we could forward that to the whole board. Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, is that? I don't want to get into a question. So I just want to mention that was a concern. And then a young lady who is my neighbor, Cora, asked that, because she could not be here this evening, that asked that I also mention that there are some deficiencies in the girls' restroom. And so I'll give you her write-up of that. So something about a door not being there. So
Okay, thank
but I'll
you.
give that to you as well. So
Okay,
that's
I'll
what
make sure I forward it to the principal and to Mr. Vos, Director of Facilities. Thank you.
Other reports or announcements? All right. Yeah, I would just mention Ms. Dunn's not here, so I'll take the announcement. The PTO at Annie Yates has been very active and well functioning this year. Cookies. Oh, you got candy bars? Talk about sugar. Ms. Dunn did come and present at the last PTO meeting about the issue Mr. Pats raised about sugariness, and so you might just check in with her to see what her response is, and it would be good to know if she's doing anything different.
I certainly will. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Let me make sure.
All right. At this point, this concludes our open session, and we are now going to adjourn to closed session. Thank you.